Well, good afternoon, Formula Sim Racing viewers, and welcome and thank you for joining us here to round 13, race 13 of the Formula Sim Racing ACE Championships, brought to you from the Marina Bay circuit at Singapore. And including this race, we only have 4 races to go, which brings me to a big announcement that the championship has been decided. The Estonian driver Sander Kallis has had an absolutely stunning season, made up of 10 podiums, and within that, 8 wins, 1 second and 1 third, to amass 245 points in total. And his nearest rival is the Spanish Catalonian driver Sergi Eras on 139 points. And being that there's only 100 points left in the championship, it is mathematically impossible for Sergi or Felix van Delft to catch Sander. So we have to proclaim him the champion of Formula Sim Racing ACE and congratulate him on an absolutely superb season. So we wanted to do that, get that done before we go out and start talking about the rest, this round and the rest of the season. So an amazing season by Sander. Looking at his history of Formula Sim Racing, he's completed only 49 races, and that is so to achieve the ACE Championship title in such a dominating fashion, having only been driving in FSR for the 2 previous years. He was second place in the Pro Championship in 2015, moved up to ACE for 2016 last year, and managed to come 5th. And now in 2017, his 3rd season in FSR and his 2nd season in ACE, he's won the title in a most dominant fashion. And the rules being as they are, the top 3 are required to move up to World Championship. And so Sander will move up into the World Championship and certainly won't be a struggle for him on pace for next season. So massive congratulations to Sander. There's still a lot to race for because I'm just looking here at the standings. Sergi Eras is on 139 points and Felix van Delft, and both of these guys have won races, are only separated by 9 points with 100 left on the table. So second place in the title is wide open. And there's another interesting little gaggle of drivers. Lucas Schmidt, Duald Nell and Christoph Schoer are all within 6 points of each other on 109, 105 and 103. So we've got a very interesting tussle for P2, and we've also got a very, very interesting tussle for bragging rights for P4. So there's still a hell of a lot to race for. So which brings us here to the qualifying session at Marina Bay, and we couldn't have a much bigger contrast with our last race, which was at Monza. And Monza, of course, massive speeds, very low wing, low downforce, and in truth, not a lot of corners. I mean, Marina Bay here, there are more turns here in Sector 3 than there are in the whole track at Monza. So we've got a lot of wing, a lot of work, a lot of engine cooling, a lot of very sweaty drivers by the end. We'll be expecting this race to probably last 1 hour and 3/4, contrasting with about 1 hour and 20 minutes at Monza. Top speed's probably 60 kilometres an hour lower. Monza, we had guys hitting 350. Here, about 290 is going to be as fast as we'll see these cars go. So, without any further ado, we'll start having a look at what's happening in quali. And I can see here Arif Roslan has just gone purple in Sector 1 on his first lap, with only an outlap to his credit so far. Christoph Schoer done a PB Sector 2. Danny Van Der Neet purple in Sector 3. So we might ride with Danny Van Der Neet for a moment in the Netrex car. He's just entering Sector 3 car, looking a little bit understeery underneath him. The front tyres may not have yet fully come in. The balance of the car changes a lot as the fronts heat up and start to offer grip. If the rears are too hot, and you get a bit of an imbalance. But Danny negotiating the final corner here, the final 2 corners, to cross the finish line and to go second with a 140.364. 3 drivers managed to dip into the 139s in the warm-up session. And I'm just noticing here that there, Arif Roslan with a purple sector 2 has managed to put the car in third. Dewald Nell crosses the line for fourth with a 141.196. Just looking here for any other interesting sector times. We've got a lot of other drivers now setting of course personal best sectors because it is their first sector. We've got a few new names in ACE this week and in the last couple of weeks as well. What's been happening with ACE, we needed a couple of seats filled. The league as a whole is absolutely buoyant with massive numbers of drivers, but in Pro Division, for example, we've been having so many sign-ups, we've had to do pre-qualification because only 30 get to race. So 4, 5 or 6 guys each race have not made the cut and not been able to race at all. So what we've done is we've opened up ACE a little bit to privateers, so a few of those drivers get to race, because there was no sense turning people away from Pro and not having a completely stacked grid in ACE. So we've got a few privateers who, in truth, would have been better getting their feet wet in Pro Division, but great opportunity for them to drive here in ACE against some of the best drivers in the world, and a few people have been seizing that opportunity with both hands. Quite a big learning curve for a lot of drivers, and realising that it is just not quite as easy as it might look. Now, Christoph Schoer is going out now to have another go. He's on an outlap at the moment, just bringing his tyres in. And Christoph Schoer, I think, was one of the 3 drivers who managed to go below a 140 and get into the 139s in quali. A little bit of trivia for us. Last year's qualifying pole in a completely different car, of course, mimicking real life. The cars last year were a little bit heavier, a little bit slower. It was a 141.5, but in 2015, quali was a 138.876, and that was, of course, in that year we were basically using the ISI Formula 2012 car with a couple of little tweaks to tyres. So I think we're going to be probably not threatening that 2015 lap time this season here in Marina Bay. And these cars, just for a little bit of information for you, they're based pretty much on a 2009 Formula 1 car. Naturally aspirated 2.4 litre V8 engine, producing around 797 horsepower and revving to 18,000 RPM. And no little gizmos. There's no KERS, there's no DRS, there's no different mixture settings. So it is old-fashioned, hands on the steering wheel, as fast as you dare, and it's all down to the racer. As Christoph Schoer makes a very committed entry onto the pit straight to start his second go. He'll get effectively 4 timed laps here. The drivers have 12 laps to work with, and that usually means an out lap, a hot lap, and an in lap makes up 3, so they get 4 sets of 3 to try to put their best lap time in. This is a track where qualifying absolutely essential, because it is not easy to overtake except on strategy. We'll go more into some of that trivia during the warm-up, and for the time being we'll just concentrate on the driving. So I'm just looking here at Christoph Schoer's. His opening sector was not a PB. Just waiting for the timing system to update. Just crossing the Anderson Bridge now. That's interesting part of the track, and fighting for turn in on the absolute slowest corner of the circuit, which is the one following the Anderson Bridge. And it's not looking to me like Christoph is having a faster lap. The system can take a little bit of time to update. Danny Van Den Neat, on the other hand, has gone 0.2 of a second quicker than Christoph Schoer. So once we've finished our onboard with Christoph, as he heads into the very, very turny Sector 3, it is just non-stop action here through turns 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and as he hits the pit straight, we'll see what lap time he produces. And it is a 140.178, so in fact it is 1/10 of a second slower. But Danny Van Den Neat seemed to be on a good lap, so let's just see what he's doing now. as he makes it round turn 14, the Connaught turn, and himself starts to enter the relentless right left of sector 3. And this turn 18 called Bay, it looks so intimidating as you approach it, but it's about 20 kilometres an hour faster corner than the slowest corner on the track, but you just don't want to get that one wrong. So he's threading the needle here. He's suffering some throttle oversteer as he heads up to the combination of the last 2 left-hand corners. He did have a PB in sector 2, so this could be a strong time from Danny van der Neet, and yes, indeed it is. Danny van der Neet, and unsighted by our Sander Callis, has also gone sub 140. So that's a very, very strong time by Danny van der Neet. Danny's a driver from the Netherlands and absolutely on form here as he puts the Netrex car around the lap of Marina Bay. Georg Chatsipancelis has just gone purple in sector 1 with a 25.516, so we might jump on board with Georg as he negotiates his way across the Anderson Bridge. And the left-hander here is the absolute slowest corner on the track. It's about 72, 74 kph. And you've just got to resist the urge to give it a bootful while the car's still all twisted up. Having sort of passed the apex, you've got to get the car straight and not be too greedy and short shift, or the rears will just light up and send you into impossible throttle oversteer. Georg certainly very active on the steering wheel. It looks like he's got a handful of car under him. And this, in truth, is not a track where you want to have that sort of really pointy oversteery car, because it is just exhausting. There are so many corners here. It is a long lap, a lot of laps, and a lot of cornering to do. So Georg has had a decent second sector, and where's that going to put him? Going to put him up to P6 with a 141.037. So that's a personal best of the session for Georg. Now I'm thinking we might just go back on board with Sander Callis, who is just on setting himself up on an outlap. And Sander was looking absolutely planted in the practice sessions. Seeming to run a fairly long first and second gear, Sander, as he approaches the final 2 turns. Gets the throttle down and opens up his second time lap 6 of his 12 allocated laps. Very strong through turn 3 there, requires a bit of patience. And of course this next right-hander onto the straight requires, that turn 5 requires a fair bit of confidence, because you're fairly well unsighted at turn in. You've just got to know from muscle memory where it is. This is the fastest part of the track, Raffles Boulevard, up to about 290 kilometres per hour. Big on the anchors down into about 111 kilometre an hour left-hander. And this one here is quite intimidating as well. If you miss that braking marker and it's not very clear, that's an 80 kilometre an hour corner. And now left onto the St Andrews Road. He'll hit about 265 down here before diving into the Singapore Sling. It's a bit more technical than it is actually on the real Formula 1 circuit now, because they took out some of the challenging curbing here. And then over the Anderson Bridge and left through the slowest corner of them all. Down onto the Esplanade Drive, where he'll exceed 270 kph before massive braking zone. And this is where the brakes are at their absolute hottest right now, because you've had 2 fairly big stops and you've got another big stop here. So this is where you find out if you haven't done enough brake cooling. That the car is looking pretty planted, but not on a PB through turn 3 here. But we might follow the rest of Sander's lap as the newly crowned ACE Formula SimRacing champion, and see what Sander Callis does with his time. And in fact, well, that snuck under the radar. He managed to string together 3 very good sectors, and he's gone 0.06 of a second quicker than Danny van der Neet. So it is absolutely all on for pole at the moment. Arif Roslan, it might be worth a little look with Arif Roslan as he's about to enter sector 3. Arif has had a personal best in sector 2 and a purple sector 1. Purple means the absolute fastest time of the session in that sector. The car's looking very pointy, looking a little bit hard to manage. Setup here is a big issue, which we might touch on if time allows during the break. But he's had a purple sector 1, a personal best sector 2, and struggling a bit to get the car turned in adequately through the very, very turny Sector 3. Bit of correction, bit of throttle steer there onto the straight, and Arif Roslan runs a 1:41.21, so that is a personal best for him. I'm just going to have a look at his previous lap time. Yeah, he's found a quarter of a second there, which is fabulous work. He was a 1:40.4 last time round, a 1:40.121 this time round. So that's a very, very strong improvement from Arif Roslan. So just looking here to see if anybody else is setting purple sectors. I'll look for somebody else who's on a hot lap. So it is game on for pole position. Christoph Schoer leaving the pit lane now to go out and launch his third attempt. I'm just having a little bit of a look at Sergei Eras. I was sort of expecting Sergei Eras to pull something out of the bag at this late stage, so we might ride on with him. In fact, he's gone personal best in Sector 2. He's in Sector 3 now and just approaching the final double left-hand kink onto the straight, dragging the nose of the car around there. And yes, he's taken time off and moved himself into P5. So nice lap from Sergei, still just a touch over the 140 mark. So we've got the top 5 drivers are within 3/4 of a second. We tend to see slightly, and we tend to expect slightly bigger margins here between, say, pole and P5 and P10, because this is a very long lap in terms of time. If we think back to Monza, pole was about a 1:21. Here it's about a 1:40. So it's a longer track, but there's also so many corners, and it's the corners where the differences occur. You know, if you've got 23 corners to put some work in, and you're slightly better than the next guy, you've got 23 opportunities to pull a gap. Whereas at Monza, I think there's 7, and 3 of them are chicanes anyway. So we do expect bigger margins. It's a long lap, and I think anybody who can get within a second of pole here is driving very well. The South African driver, Dewald Nel, I'm seeing has just done a personal best Sector 1 and Sector 2. So we might in fact ride on board with Dewald Nel, see what he's doing. Fairly aggressive line there through the Bay corner, turn 18. Car seems to be pretty planted, if anything very slightly understeery, but that's no bad thing in race trim. It could be holding him back ever so slightly in his quali attempt. But P8, and Dewald Nel moves up from P8 to P6, so that's a good lap from Dewald Nel. Sander Callis ominously has just set a PB for Sector 1 and gone faster than almost anybody has in Sector 1. And in fact, Sander has now just lowered the pole time. So fantastic lap from Sander Callis. Now well into the 139s, half a second into the 139s at the 139.5. So fabulous qualifying lap from Sander Callis. Jared van der Weed has just set a personal best to move to the 142 to move into P11. So that's a good strong lap from him. Sander is in the pits and doesn't have enough laps left to do another hot lap. Christoph Schoer is on a warm-up lap, having completed 10 laps, so he's on his last shot at pole. It would be a massive ask for him to find 0.4 of a second to put it on pole, but he may indeed be able to get on the front row alongside Sander Callis, which I'm sure is his goal at the moment. And just looking here at some other drivers putting in PBs, but looks like Christoph Schoer has abandoned that lap, so clearly not happy with his delta and felt there was no point in finishing that lap. So in as far as the top 3 drivers are concerned, that is qualifying done, but we've still got a couple of people got another shot. Arif Roslan, and I'm just looking at him, he's got a personal best Sector 2, so he may be able to do something here. He's very, very close to Christoph Schoer, may well be able to surpass him I won't use the word jump him because they're both on row 2. So it won't mean moving up a position in terms of physical position, but on the grid, but it could mean being on the other side of the track. So if Roslan here approaches the last 2 corners, the double left-hand kink, and let's see what he can manage to do from a 140.121, and does not manage to improve that lap. It's a 140.210, so he's about 900ths off his previous best. We've got a couple of other drivers here setting personal best. Todor Vasilev has just set a personal best lap of a 142.342, which puts him in 12th place. And I'm noticing here that Sergei Eras has also got another hot lap in store, and he's set a decent sector 1, but not a stunning sector 1. Fighting the car a bit as he exits the slowest corner on the track, turn 13, racing up to 14, the Connaught. And this is one where you've got to use every bit of the track and get the car moving around, get it lined up for this. It takes a lot of patience, this right-left chicane here, as he builds up to turn 18, which goes under the hotel. 19, easy to get oversteer here. 20, car won't turn in. 21, got to fight the oversteer. And 22, you've got a lot of aero by now because you've got a bit of speed up and you can push the car quite hard. So let's see what Sergei does. And he lowers his best time to 140.332, but stays on row 3. But that is a good solid lap from Sergei. So I'm looking here, we don't have Jared Vanderweed may be on a lap. Yes, he is on a lap, and he will be the final runner because the session has ended now. Checker flag's out, and nobody else can commence a hot lap. Very aggressive through the final 2 corners, and car getting a bit tail happy down the straight, and he does not improve his best lap. He's in fact about half a second slower than his best lap. So that's qualifying over for this round. So congratulations to the top 3. Sander Callis, the newly crowned ACE champion, Danny van der Neet, and Christoph Schoer. So sensational performance from all of those guys. And what will happen now is the race director will get the grid organised, but the drivers now move into a warm-up phase where they get used to the cars on full fuel, because it's a completely different game. It's a difference of up to 3 or 4 seconds a lap between running a car on fumes and throwing everything at it to putting 60, 70 litres of fuel in the car and starting to get out there and get your eye in, get your sights in for the different braking points, for the different way in which the car will turn in and respond. Not to mention perhaps getting used to the prime tyres. So interesting bit of trivia here for the Singapore circuit. It was actually used as a open-wheeler race circuit from 1961 to 1973 for Grand Prix racing. It was a non-championship racing in Formula Libre, which I think just means any sort of open wheel you want to turn up with. And they ran that from 61 to 73, and then it had a long hiatus until the 2008 season, where it started as a night race in the format that we know it now. The pole lap record, very similar, life imitating art. A 139.491 is the pole record. It's a 5 kilometre lap, or 5.065 kilometres. So tonight we'll be having a 61 lap race for your entertainment. The drivers are required to use 2 tyre compounds. We've simply got the prime and the option. And as is normal, the option's a bit quicker, but starts to go off a bit quicker as well. And I think we'll find the crossover period is about eight laps in. The primes are actually quicker than the option. For those of you, and we know we've got a loyal band of followers who come along and always watch the Formula Sim Racing events on YouTube. But for anybody that's new, just to give you a tiny little bit of a background, this is the world's oldest and highest standard of sim racing tournament. It's been going for 17 years now, and in fact predates racing over the internet. So it's incredibly well established. It's produced some of the finest sim racers of all time. And we use the unsurpassed rFactor 2 simulation. And there is simply no better simulation to use for a high-level tournament such as this. The incredible fidelity and accuracy of the physics modelling, the way the tyre compounds react, the way that even subtle changes to tyre pressure, even changing brake ducting has the brake ducts themselves are calibrated to have various levels of lift based on the size of brake duct that you fit. So it's an incredibly complex art getting one of these cars set up for the various tracks that we come to, and that is really a differentiator. You've got to have an engineer in your corner or somebody in your team who's capable of setting one of these cars up or helping you set one up. And that's why it's strongly advised if you think about getting into FSR, and we really warmly invite any viewers that are interested, if you're fast where you race, and whether it be in another simulation or let's say simulations a little bit more along the Simcade scale, from pure sim to arcade, there's stuff in the middle called Simcade, and I'm not saying that in a critical or a slanderous kind of tone. I mean, I'm really enjoying the new Cody's F1 2017 game myself, but it is nothing like this in terms of the pure physics and the pure handling. This is the real thing. So if you're interested in getting involved, the links are below the stream. You can see there, where to go to get involved. You just need the rFactor 2 sim, which is an unbelievable bargain in my opinion, compared to some of the other stuff out there. The tracks are free to download, the cars are free to download, so you can get out there. Our servers are even open for free practice up until the race day. About an hour before the race, we password protect them. But the rest of the time, you're free to come and have a go and get involved in Formula Sim Racing. The normal progression is to start off in Pro, and Pro allows you to use a couple of assists. You can have traction control, and you can have ABS on low settings, which will help you perhaps manage the car a little bit, but it's not going to help you win because they come with a bit of a weight penalty, and the car simply does not handle as well with traction control. You tend to get a bit of plough understeer. Pro runs at 75% race distance, so tomorrow we'll be racing over, I think, 46 laps. And then we move up to here, which is ACE, and ACE, the only assist you're allowed using ACE is auto clutch, and ACE runs full Grand Prix race distance and uses another amazing feature within FSR, within rFactor 2, is we use real-time, real-world weather. So the server is connected to a weather station in downtown Singapore, which is starting to look really, really lovely as it gets a bit darker. And if there's a weather change in Singapore, within about a minute and a half, we'll get that same weather change on the server. So if some rain comes, we get rain. So it's no one deciding somewhere, oh, let's make it a wet round. It is literally the real world weather. As it happens tonight, we're pretty close to default weather. We're 26 degrees ambient. Track temperature's always maintained at 29. But the drivers have to be ready. They've got to be prepared. If it is a wet race, they've got to change the setup, which normally means having either a lot more rear wing or a lot less front wing, changing brake pressure, brake balance, a bit more diff lock on the power side to make the car drivable in the wet. So ACE have got to be able to deal with wet weather. And then World Championship, and this is where you will come up against the very best drivers in the world. That is full race distance, full real world weather, and no assist whatsoever, so manual clutch. And that's where you race against the very best. But having said that, in all three leagues, you will find drivers of the very, very top caliber. I mean, in my first season in Pro, the lead driver was a Dutch driver called Jeroen Kwakel, who jumped straight into World Championship and won it in his debut season. So if you're at the pointy end of pro, you're probably in the top handful in World Championship. So if you want to compare yourself with the best, come and get involved with FSR. We'd love to see you. There's plenty of guys to talk to and help you in the forums. Getting back to this track, fuel consumption is about 3.85 litres a lap. The tyre delta, so the difference in speed between the prime and the options, around about 0.7 of a lap. There's a couple of penalties to be dealt with today. So we'll have a few people starting at the back of the grid, and also from pit lane. We've got back of grids, we have Bogdanov, Ruth and Schmidt, all with back of grids, and Zarov with the pit lane start, and Skinner with the pit lane start, although I believe Skinner is not here today, has other commitments. One or two of those might be under appeal, so they will manage to start on the grid if their penalty is currently under appeal. I won't get down into the details of penalties. Most of them are to do with exceeding track limits, either on a qualifying lap or on a race lap. We have a very strict system. You've got a maximum number of times that you can cut the track or extend the track, and it's 10% of the amount of laps. So in a 60 lap race, you've got six get out of jail cards if you cut the track or extend the track. Beyond that, you start to get penalties. More than 10%, you'll get a 30-second penalty. More than 20% of laps, and you'll get a 60-second penalty. And the idea is to just keep that level playing field, have everybody driving the same track as one another. Now, the last thing I'll do while we're in the warm-up session is I'll just run through the standings. We've got Sander Callis on 245 points. Sergi Eras from Catalonia on 139. Felix van Delft from the Netherlands on 130. Swiss driver Lucas Schmidt in fourth place on 109. De Nel from Republic of South Africa on 105 in fifth place. Italian Christoph Schoer in P6 on 103. So you can see there that fourth, fifth and sixth are incredibly close. Danny van den Eet again from the Netherlands in P7 on 81 points. And then we've got Arif Roslan on 58 in 8th. 9th is George Winter, who's not racing today, on 56. And Adam Maguire in 10th place on 53. His brother Luke Maguire, Luke Maguire is racing today, the two Maguire brothers. And Luke is on 15 points in P23 in the championship. So the drivers now are just getting used to the full fuel loads and the minor tweaks they can make. We run parc fermé, which is just a French word meaning closed park. And what that means is that the cars can't be heavily modified for qualifying. And the same thing used to happen in real world Formula One. They'd have a super qualifying engine with turbo wastegate welded shut, which could produce 1200 horsepower but last about 8 laps before blowing up. And no one wanted to change that, so the FIA cunningly said, well, that's fine, guys, we're not going to ban these qualifying cars, but we're going to put them in parc fermé until half an hour before the race. And that move actually meant that there were no longer qualifying cars. So the drivers can make some very minor adjustments. They can't touch key things like cooling or diff, brake cooling, but what they can do is they can make changes to front wing, brake pressure and brake bias, and even steering lock, because you might be happy to run a bit more aggressive steering lock and maybe a bit less front wing, so you can have just a slightly more understeery car, or the reverse. So you can make those minor tweaks to the car to tune it more to your liking for a really hot lap in quali. But they're the only things you can change when you move the car to race format.
That is very, very true, Dave. And hello, Dave. How are you?
Oh, hello. Welcome, Dave Paling. What a pleasure. What a surprise you're here. Thanks for joining.
Well, I spotted that you were on your own. I sat there watching, so I thought, you know what, I'll come and see if you want a little bit of somebody to talk to while you're watching these guys fly around the Singapore track.
It would be absolutely fantastic, because without you here, Dave, I was going to run out of my trivia before the race was over.
I'm sure it'll give you a bit of time now in the race. I will mention as well, quickly to the viewers, hello to the viewers. Hopefully we're going to have a fantastic race here. If you do have any questions that you want to put to us, I have got my eye on YouTube. So if you do want to ask us any questions, feel free to do so. Put hashtag AskFSR, and if I can get them in during the race, I will do. But also, please don't give any F1 spoilers, because I'm missing the F1 replay to come and help Dave out. So yeah, no spoilers, please.
Yeah, brilliant. In fact, I've got YouTube open on my small screen here, so I'm ready to keep an eye on the live chat as well.
Good stuff. So, Dave, Sander Callas, I know you've mentioned that he's become the champion. It is a fantastic result for him. I mean, does his mindset change now in the remaining races in FSR and ACE, or does he decide, right, I'm going to go and win them all?
Well, it'd just have to be a great feeling, wouldn't it, with four races to go. And Sander has just hit some incredible form, really, because when we look back, you know, he had a good season in 2015 where he came second in Pro. Last year he came fifth in ACE. But he has absolutely found some consistency and some performance that we didn't know was there, and he's absolutely dominated ACE. There's one other small thing I will explain to the viewers. We normally broadcast in DX9. But Georg Winter is experimenting with, we're broadcasting in DX11, so we hope you enjoy the enhanced clarity and colours and realism of DX11, but it does mean we haven't got quite as many widgets. So when you'll see the tower on the top left of the screen explaining who's who in the zoo, but you won't see the traditional bottom left, you won't see the driver's helmet, because we just don't have those features available to us.
That is true. I mean, I know Chris Cobb has been working tirelessly to give us something to show the viewers on DX11, because DX11 does look really good, but without having a proper overlay, it is a little bit frustrating as a broadcaster or commentator, or even as a viewer. But yeah, I know that is going to get progressed as time goes by, obviously, and what the viewers would usually see on the FSR broadcast will hopefully be able to bring in the near future on DX11 as well. Now, Dave, I know you did mention about drivers with penalties, and I do believe there is a few that have got to start in the pit lane. Rando Muru and Wade Mark Antonio are new drivers and allocated late, so they're starting in the pits, but also Luke Maguire is starting in the pits as well. But as you know, Dave, this is a track where actually starting in the pits might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a twin-edged sword, isn't it? Because this is a hard track to pass, so if I was fighting for a podium, I wouldn't want to be in the pits. If I was fighting for a top 10, I probably wouldn't mind being in the pits, because I think you're going to be driving past a bit of carbon fibre through the course of the event, because just keeping your car out of the walls for 61 laps is challenge enough of its own. It's a bit of a Monaco scenario until you really get into the zone and start to feel your way around this track without thinking too much.
That it is. Would you like to have a quick run through the grid order while we've got about 6 corners to go for you, Dave? Give you a moment to grab a drink.
Go ahead, mate.
Okay, so on pole position, guys, we have Sander Callas for NetRex Grand Prix. In second place, we've got Danny van der Neet, his teammate. In third place, we have Christoph Schoer for Go Speed Racing. And in fourth place, we have Arif Roslan for Invictus Black. In fifth place, we have Sergi Eras for Flag to Flag, while in sixth place, we have Georg Chatsipantelis for Go Speed Racing. Might be his best qualifying position, you know. In seventh place, we have De Nel for Deltec, and in eighth place, we have Petter Schultz for Avid Chronic Racing Grey. In ninth, we have Fernando Alvarez for Invictus Motorsport, and in 10th, his teammate Adek Kulak, a new driver. 11th is Jared van der Vida, while in 12th place, we have Todor Vasiliev for NetRex. 13th is Stoyan Barbukov, 14th Pascal Chapon, 15th Luke Maguire starting in the pits, Dmitry Zaharov, I'll get his name right this time, Rando Muru and Wade Mark Antonio. So Dave, the lights are coming on, the race is about to get going here in Singapore, the lights are green and away they go. It's a good start for Sander Callas, but I tell you what, Christoph Schoer in third place has had a good start as well, trying to work his way around the outside. What are you seeing, Dave?
Oh, we've had big contact between Jared van der Weed. In fact, he is out into the... He is well and truly geographically out of that track now. I will have a little look and see who else is involved in that. Well, you stick with everyone.
No problem. It's a good start for the top 6 drivers. Georg Stefanko has managed to gain 1 place. However, Sergi Edas is trying to make the move up the inside into turn 7, and he's now on the outside for turn 8. And George is going to defend the inside quite aggressively, but he manages to hold on to the position. Just behind him, they're holding station, but they're right in on the battle. So Luke Maguire, who started 16th, I believe it was, in the pit lane, he's in 15th. He's got a bit of a gap to the trainer cars, but it won't be long until he's on the back of them. So Dave, which country did that driver end up in?
Yeah, well, I think he's in the water in Singapore, but I think he's within the city limits. I'm just going to have a little look now and try to tell you who was involved in that one.
Okay, so I apologise if it seems like I've come in and taken over. That's not what I intend to do. But when you see a car flying out of the track, when you see a car flying out of the track, it's obviously nice to know what's happened there. Okay, the top 3 runners are holding station a little bit, although Sander Callas is trying to open up a little bit of a gap. Arif Roslan in 4th place. He's trying to close down on Christoph Schoer, but he's fully aware that he's got Georg Chatzipantelis right behind him, who's opened up a little bit of a gap now to Sergi Edas. Let's see, we then got Peter Schultz, Fernando Alvarez, De Wold Nell, and Stoyan Barbukov. Oh, and let's see, is that a little bit further back? Dmitry Zarahov coming under pressure from Arek Kulak. But yeah, I think most of the action we're going to see to begin with is going to be up near the front, around about 3rd place.
Yes, Kulak was involved in that collision with van der Weed. I get the feeling that Kulak may have had some prior contact, which forced him offline, and I'm just skimming back through that now. I'll be able to update you in a moment. But it was Kulak that T-boned van der Weed.
So in his first race in FSR as well.
Yes, Kulak was hit. He had a bit of a by Barbukov. Kulak was hit by Barbukov, spun him, and he T-boned van der Weed. So it was just unfortunately a bit of a chain reaction down the back.
Okay, and the other 2 new drivers, Rando Moura and Wade Marc Antonio, have just had a little bit of a coming together. Let's see, a little bit of wing damage for both of those drivers. However, Luke Maguire on an absolute charge on prime tyres. He's now on the back of Arek Kulak, who has got a little bit of front wing damage, has just clipped the barrier on the Anderson Bridge. But I do know that Luke Maguire's pace is pretty good around here, so if he's able to make moves, he's going to try and do it. But as you know, Dave, and as the viewers know, this is a track where it is not easy to overtake on.
No, indeed. I'm noticing here that Maguire is running on the prime tyre, so he can afford to perhaps bide his time for a couple more laps and perhaps launch an attack once his tyres start to feel good, and once the option tyres. Now, Kulak's had another bit of a touch on the barrier, so I think if he was wise, he would probably dive into pit lane and get a nice new front wing on that car, because it is starting to handle at the moment a bit like a milk float. So Maguire could well attack him now down into the turn 1, turn 2 combination, but he should do it with caution, and he does decide discretion is the better part of valor there as he follows Kulak around.
Up at the front there, sort of all holding station at the moment.
Luke Maguire had a very, very scrappy run onto the straight just now, the fastest straight on the track. Not down to anything other than the car control, I think. I'm just going to go back and visit that.
Yeah, that's what I just made my... Pascal Chapon just very nearly lost it into the next complex of corners. Yeah, Luke Maguire making my noises at seeing him having that little bit of a moment there. It's very easy to do.
I think Kulak perhaps potentially braked earlier than he anticipated, and that he had the effect of sort of brake checking him. So I think the sooner Luke can get around Kulak, I think the happier and more comfortable that he'll be.
Yeah, definitely. Did you manage to talk about strategy at all?
No, I've saved that update. I'd be pleased to hear.
Well, I would help you out with it, but you know what? I'm totally blown away with potential strategies here. From what I've been seeing on my own setup, the tyres are kind of like, they don't last too bad, but it's a little bit awkward. I don't think you're going to be able to necessarily go long on tyres in this race and get an overall benefit from it because of what the option tyres are going to be limited to.
Well, I had a little bit of a look, and totally different cars, of course, but in 2016, and as we know, the tyres were not very durable in the 2016 car, but it was a 4-stop event by most of the top 10. 2015, it was a 4-stop, but I've just got the gut feeling that if you want to win this one, you've probably got to try to make it a 3-stopper.
Possibly. I mean, I think Harry Frosland just ran a bit wide. He's being closed down by Georg Chatsipantelis. George is right behind him. Yeah, I mean, I think a 3-stopper may be the way to go, but if someone looks after the tyres quite nicely and has got decent pace, they may be able to get a 2-stop to work. But wow, if they over-push their tyres a tiny bit, it will never work in a million years.
What do you think you can get out of how many laps do you think you can get out of a prime, Dave?
Out of a prime, you could anywhere between 20 and 27 maybe.
Wow. Okay.
It all depends on the type of setup a driver's got, the type of tyre wear they got, because with this being such a long circuit, the tyre wear per lap could be quite high. So a lot of it depends on setup and driver. It's a really difficult one to know, but again, if you go long on prime, it still leaves you a long option stint, and that's very difficult to try and do.
Yeah, well, I think it's really going to boil. I think between these top 3 guys who are currently occupying, well, the top 4 guys are occupying 4.5 seconds of racetrack. It becomes, as you said a race or two ago, I think it was Hungary where you said it becomes purely strategic. You've just got to decide who you're going to try to cover, and prevent people from getting the undercut on you.
Yeah, I mean, I know I mentioned as well, Georg Chatsipantelis getting very sideways. I do know that Christoph Schoer is very close to the back of Danny Van Der Neet. I've just seen as well that Luke Maguire has finally made a move on Arek Kulak, and I was going to say that Luke Maguire's pace is very quick, and what I said in a previous race was it doesn't matter how quick you are, you're limited to the guy ahead's lap times, and that's kind of the situation Luke Maguire's in, although he may be able to attack Dmitry Zaharov here. He's limited to the lap times of the drivers ahead of him, so he's got to think, right, okay, do I look after my tyres, do I go long, or do I push harder? Pascal Chapon loses the back end of the car, around he goes, that's him dropping places. Dmitry Zaharov is all out of shape, nearly tags Luke Maguire. That could have ended disastrously as they head up towards the Singapore Sling.
There has been a question in the broadcast, in the live stream chat, why the drivers' names aren't visible. That person must have just joined us a few minutes ago. This stream is being run in DX11 to really as a test to check broadcast quality, etc. And the plugins that show the driver name and their helmet, etc., have not yet been created for DX11. We've got the tower on the left, which shows you their positions, but what we're going to try to do is make sure we mention the name of the driver that we're on board with plenty of times, so you know who we're watching. But race positions are available in the tower on the left-hand side.
Yeah, it may be a little difficult at times for the viewers to keep up. There's Luke Maguire all over the back of Dmitry Zaharov, trying to go side by side into the final 2 corners, and they do go side by side. Zaharov stays ahead just, but now Maguire may be able to attack down into turn 1. No, Zaharov has the better straight line speed. Maguire all out of shape on the brakes and nearly loses the car. Does lose the car. He's off at turn 3.
Well, Maguire's car just seems to be quite unstable in the rear end, but that was an amazing move on Zaharov. That, presuming we're on board with Maguire at the moment, the other thing Maguire's done, unfortunately, is allowed Kulak to get back in front of him again, which would be very, very disconcerting after spending all that time and making all that effort to get in front of him.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I know you do like to mention at times, Dave, as I'm just keeping an eye on Georg Chatsipantelis, who's got Sergi Aras right behind him. One thing you like to mention is how close to the limit these guys, or us in FSR, run our brake temperatures, our engine temperatures, our aerodynamics and everything like that. Oh, I've just seen Harry Frosland lagging. Sorry, I thought he was off into the barrier. Yeah, one thing that Luke Maguire may have just found there is he would have his car set up to brake a certain amount heading into turn 1. If he's been put off a little bit by how much Dimitri is braking, a little bit more for example, that extra little pressure that Maguire puts on his brake pedal unbalances the car all of a sudden, because it's going beyond the limit that his car's set up for. So that is a possibility, but I do know if you get all over the curves at turns 1, 2 and 3, it can send the car sideways.
Well, it was surprising how much more drive onto the pit straight that Zaharov's car had, because it just pulled away from Maguire's incredibly.
Chatzipantelis and Edas, Dave, were side by side. I think Georg may be coming under attack here. Heras has managed to drop in behind Georg again, but 5th and 6th place, battling tooth and nail at the moment.
Yeah, well, Sergi Eras is a very fine driver, and I'm sure he's going to be able to put a lot of pace, a lot of pressure under Georg Chatzipantelis. And which brings me to the point of this track, Dave. I mean, 61 laps around this circuit, and keeping it off the concrete barriers for that many laps, 23 corners per lap. It is just such an intense art of concentration, and no 2 laps are the same. Your tyres are either coming in and coming to you in terms of performance, or they're going away from you. I can hear the sounds of somebody braking the car. I think that must have been a Pascal Chapon DNF. I'll go back and have a look at that. And so the car's performance is constantly changing, constantly evolving, and no 2 laps are identical, and it is just incredibly big ask not to put a foot wrong. Yes, unfortunately, Pascal Chapon put too much of his right-hand wheels onto the curb on the exit of turn 7 Memorial, onto the Nickel Highway, and that unfortunately resulted in a spin and terminal damage to the front of his car. So he is now unfortunately retired from the event.
It is a shame that for Pascal, but you are absolutely spot on once again, Dave, by saying that no 2 laps are the same. You're right, they aren't. And the tyres are either coming to you or they're going away. The problem is, around this track, I think there's probably a lot more of feeling like they're going away, especially if you're the car very closely behind another car trying to be close enough to attack. It punishes the tyres massively around here. I mean, we've talked about dirty air in corners many races this season, and I heard what you said earlier about Sector 3 here. Got more corners in Sector 3 than Monza has in total, and you're right, so it's dirty air in corners for many more times than you'll see for most of the season. It's so punishing on car and driver.
And what you can't really see very clearly from the broadcast stream is how much the car's moving around. You don't sort of just point it to a place and it gets there. The car here on this circuit is constantly sliding. It's a very smooth surface, but it's not a particularly grippy one. And even with the relatively high wing the drivers are using here, there is so much movement. The car is moving around underneath them, and it is a real challenge to get the car set up and tuned in properly, because you need pretty strong braking here. There aren't many massive braking zones, but you really do need fantastic drive out of these slow corners, particularly in Sector 3 where it's just corner after corner after corner. You need the car to turn in, and you need it to be stable once it's turning in, and you need it to be strong on throttle coming out. So it's a very different car setup. I mean, it's stating the bleeding obvious really, but it is such a different art to getting the car right for here than it was getting it right for Monza.
It really is. And talking about the cars moving around, we're on lap 9 already, and it is a long race, but if these guys aren't doing 3-4 stops, the pit window is opening up any moment, meaning the option tyres are already going off. Anybody on the prime tyres, this is their time to pounce, or their time to be patient and wait for those guys pitting. I'm hinting at Luke Maguire because he's right up the gearbox of Arek Kulak again, but he can't get past him. And part of that is because Arek Kulak's car on the option tyres is moving all over the place. So everywhere that Maguire kind of wants to go, he can't risk going.
No, indeed. And Maguire potentially could be as high as P8 or P9 once the option runners start to pit, and he'll just be having his fingers crossed, hoping that Kulak is going to pit fairly soon. But to my eye, I don't think Luke Maguire's car just doesn't look like it's handling in a really friendly way at the moment. He's getting a ton of throttle oversteer, and you just think at this point that the prime tyre would just be starting to feel pretty good. And he seems to have a bit of entry understeer and a bit of exit oversteer. So, but you know, you can't tell it all from watching from an onboard. But that's what it looks like to me.
The things as well, one of the things that I found when I mentioned about following a car, it doesn't matter how great your car is set up. When you've got another car in front of you, it's going to dictate what your car's going to do to a degree. And that's a little bit like, while you came to have a look at that, I've gone to have a quick look at Georg Chatsipantelis, who seems to be a little bit of a cork in the bottle at the moment. But he's got the likes of Sergi Adas behind him, who we know is a quick driver. We know he's great on his tyres. And although George is all over the place a little bit with the grip of his car and also the appearance of a lagging car in front of him, Sergi can't do anything about it. Whereas at Monza, if you got a little bit sideways in the parabolica, they'd be by you into turn one. Here, if the car ahead gets a little bit sideways in the corner, you've got to be on the brakes a bit. Harry Frosland out of the race. I think that may have been his disconnection.
I think that must have been that lag, because we were having tremendous lag issues watching his car. You know, very true, David. There's some interesting behavioural things about how the car's handling. The other side of it is we're watching these cars head around the track doing similar lap times, not making massive gains on one another. But what's happening, there's a subtle little game happening here beneath the surface, and that is that some of these drivers are doing these lap times pretty easily and are looking after their tyres, and other drivers are on their limit. And the first guy to blink, the first guy to pit, that's usually an indication that he's had to push harder to be where he is. And seldom do the guys who pit first manage to regain that heady heights they were in the early part of the race. And so let's see what Georg Chatsipantelis does if he gets to the first pit window safely. If he can, although his car looks like an absolute handful at the moment. It
does, doesn't it? I know he's not had a lot of practice time lately. And while you were just mentioning that, I've gone to have a quick look at Danny van der Neet. And the gap to Sander Callas has opened up at the front, and the gap to Christoph Schoer has come down. But it looks like Christoph Schoer is playing a little bit of a patient game here. He's trying to be very, very smooth on his tyres and look after them a little bit. But this is another circuit, Dave, where when it comes to the strategy, from what we've seen over the course of this season, you'd go, right, go long on your tyres, you'll gain time. But this is a bit of one of those weird ones. I mean, for example, Sergi Adas, if he pits and, puts heavier fuel on brand new tyres, you might think he's going to be slower. But actually, if he comes out in clear air, he might be a hell of a lot faster. So strategies is a total open book today, I think.
Well, indeed, and Sander's going to be talking to his engineer, and for the benefit of the viewers, a lot of these top drivers are running with an engineer on the pit wall, as it were, who will brief them and tell them, right, the driver behind you is pitted, and you know then it's either time to put the hammer down and use up what rubber you haven't used, or if you're getting to the end of the tyre use for life, it is time for you too to dive into the pits, so the other guy doesn't start circulating quicker than you. Luke Maguire's going
to make a move. He is going to make a move up the inside, turn 7. That's a beautiful move, made full advantage of his tyres there. And for any of the viewers that are wondering why you're not getting to see replays at the moment, obviously apologies for that. It is part of the DX11 overlay broadcast situation, unfortunately.
Which overtake did you just call, David?
That was Luke Maguire on Arek Kulak.
Okay. It's Groundhog Day. He's gotten past Kulak again. Now, I tell you what, they're doing a pretty good job here, because we're 10 laps in with these options. My testing told me the overlap occurred, or rather the pendulum. Oh, Maguire, big oversteer moment on the exit of 14, I think it was. Yeah, Connaught, which is just at the end of Sector 2. Massive oversteer moment from Luke Maguire. I don't think he's damaged the car. Georg Chatsipantelis, he must have heard us. He must have the stream on and he's heard us. He's in the pits. So Georg Chatsipantelis has entered the pits.
Prime tyres for him as well.
Yep, on the primes. And there's some people behind him. Vasilev, Zarov, Kulak, they're all doing PB times at the moment. So when you were saying a bit of a cork in the bottle, some of those guys are freed up now. And if they can lap quickly, George is not going to emerge. And just while I think of it, the pit exit line is so awkward here. It's so narrow. I've driven out of shopping centre car parks with wider exits than the pit exit lane here at Singapore.
Yeah,
and the drivers will be penalised if they don't stay within the white line for safety reasons. they will be penalised. So Maguire is through past Chatsapancelis, had a big better drive onto this straight.
It looked like George may have actually sort of gone, I'm on heavier fuel, I'm going to let you through because you're on the lighter fuel. I'm going to stay out of your way for a moment. And that's not a bad decision to make, because these cars on heavy fuel, prime tyre, when you've gone from options low fuel to prime tyres high fuel, the difference is massive. Christoph Schoer getting very close to Danny Van der Neet again, Dave.
Oh yes, I see there. And these top three, they've pulled almost a pit stop now on Sergi Eras, a Catalonian driver. A couple more laps like this, and these top three are going to be able to emerge unchallenged. But of course, everybody's got a pit, so it's not as if they're going to be stuck behind anyone for long. But Sander Callis 3.6 seconds ahead, 12 laps into his option stint. Braking wise, Dave, you were touching on brake temps before. The toughest part of the track on brakes for over temp is turn 14, because you've got that massive, you've got the big stop for the really tight left-hander after the Anderson Bridge, turn 13. Then you've got a massive stop for turn 14, and then a pretty big stop for turn 15, 16. That's where the brake temps are hitting their peaks. And these guys will be getting well over 1100 degrees on the rear brakes here.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on there. I mean, brake temps are a massive issue around here, apart from those corners that you mentioned, because, I mean, it's strange. I mean, cooling doesn't happen a lot here, and I think it's just the nature of the circuit. But also, at turn 14, Dave, it's one of those tricky corners that if your brakes become a little bit spongy, there's a barrier there to say hello rather quickly, and it's not very nice to you.
Well, indeed, and it's sort of it's a little bit misleading and a little bit intimidating when you turn under the hotel, turn 18. For years I've thought, well, that's the slowest and the tightest and the toughest corner on the track, but when I looked at the data, it's 20 kilometres an hour quicker through there, or 27k quicker than turn 13, which is, you know, more than 90 degrees onto the Esplanade Drive. So in fact it's only the third or fourth slowest corner, but it just looks so intimidating because you're staring at the barrier that you're going to hit as you turn in. So it's amazing. It can be very, very deceptive. Some of these corners, you know, look like they're going to seek to punish you a lot more than they are. Turn 8's another one like that. There's not a really good brake marker for turn 8 onto the Nickel Highway, and you've just got to get that one right.
Very, very true. Since Sergi Eras has been freed up a little bit, he has opened up a lovely gap on Fernando Alvarez. Sorry for that, I'm really not awake yet, folks. I'm not prepared for this at all, I do apologise. But yeah, Sergi has managed to open up a gap, and that's what the clean air does to him, and not being held up behind George Chatsapancelis. Let's see, Stoyan Barbukov seems to be struggling a little bit, but he's on the prime tyre, so he's fallen massively away from De Wolde now, but he has got a nice bit of a gap to Todor Vasilyev, who's on option tyres behind him, hasn't stopped yet. And then we've got Zaharov, Kulak and Maguire, who Maguire has just managed to sneak past Kulak, coming out of turn 3. So yeah, sneaks past, and he's going to have to hope now he doesn't get outsped on the straight. And looking at it, Kulak's got great straight line speed. Maguire defending the inside line, and he needs to defend it hard, but Kulak manages to get past, but I think he may have extended the curb a little bit there.
While that was happening, we had a blue flag moment. We had Sergi Eras managed to negotiate his way past Wade Marcantonio in P15, and to Marcantonio's credit, he managed that traffic situation very, very well. So that showed he's got some good spatial awareness and situational awareness. He's been lapped now at lap 12, but any of you that think that's bad driving, come and have a go, because these guys are super, super fast. He's just allowed Fernando Alvarez past as well, so he seems to be managing the traffic quite safely. But let me tell you, if you're not experienced with rFactor 2 and you're not experienced with this particular mod, this particular car, come on here and try and go within 5 seconds lap time of these top guys, and this is what you call diving in the deep end. And so it's a hell of an experience for some of these people. So if Wade can just manage his car and make sure that he's not causing any issues for the drivers that are coming up to him, then that itself will be good driving.
Definitely will. Okay, top three, Sander Callas looking comfortable out there in front. Danny van den Eet in second place. I think he's just been a bit of a rear gunner for Sander Callas at the moment, trying to go as long as he can on his option tyres while Christoph Schoer is behind him. Sergi Eras, it's a long gap, isn't it, Dave, from third to fourth at the moment.
Well, it is, and I think Sander might be in soon unless he's had a slight issue, because Sander set a PB 1 lap ago of a 141.6, but he's just done a 142.9, so I think he was probably using the last of his fuel and the last of his tyres and may have just pushed that a little bit hard, but certainly his tyres are
so
now
Dave, Maguire and Kulak going at it again, this time through turn 9, I believe it is, just before the Singapore Sling.
It's Groundhog Day. These guys are having a hell of a day out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one though, because I think Maguire, he's tried an overtake in one place, been repassed, tried an overtake in another place, been repassed. He's had to find Christoph Schoer into the pits. Again, Maguire's had to try and find somewhere he can get past and not get re-attacked, and he's done that quite nicely. He can't really afford to get held up too much, but he's now got Dmitry Zaharov ahead of him, but Dmitry is on the prime tyre as well.
Peter Schulze also into the pits and onto the prime tyre. Lap 14. Can't be long before our leader pits, but you know what? He might just be looking behind him and saying, I'm going to cover these boys off. I'm just going to wait till they pit and then I'll pit. But really, he's only got his teammate of any threat to him, because Sergei is 20, as you said, 23 seconds adrift, but starting to do some good lap times. I'm going to have a bit of a look at Sergei Eras, the Catalonian driver. And yes, he's been unleashed a bit, because he was 143s and 144s early in this stint, and he's now into the mid to high 142. So Sergei's having a bit of fun now that he's got clear air, as you mentioned earlier.
Maguire, sorry to keep mentioning Maguire, he has got an opportunity to have a look at Zaharov, but no, Zaharov quite quick in a straight line. Is one of the natures of his setups. I think for these prime runners, he's having a look on the inside. Oh, it's a little bit too tight.
Oh, no.
A little bit of contact, and that's the front wing end plate gone off the Ghost Speed car.
These guys, it's been like a club for 15 laps. Maguire, Zaharov and Kulak have just been inseparable. And Georg Chatsapancelis, I'm sure, down in P12, if he's bringing these primes in and the car's starting to feel okay, I'm sure he would love these blokes to pit soon.
Definitely. Let's see, Christoph Schoer, he came back out in 6th place in a nice little gap of air. It's an opportunity to try and catch the leaders. It looks like Fernando de Waldnell, into the pits. I'll keep an eye on him for you.
Well, that was lovely timing from Schoer then, because if he's out and on lovely hot tyres, if he can get some good laps in, and particularly if Nell drops himself back into, because there's a prime runner behind him. Yes, Barbakov on primes has passed Nell, so Nell's got the issue of a couple of prime runners in front of him, so Schoer might have just called this perfectly.
He may have done. De Waldnell coming out of the pits, I believe he was he behind Petter Schultz? He was behind Petter Schultz. He's now ahead of Petter Schultz by a good 2 or 3 seconds. And then right behind Petter Schultz is the Vasiliev, Zaharov, Maguire, Chatsapancelis and Kulak battle.
So we're 16 laps into a 61 lap event. We've got
car in the barrier. Sorry, that was... Who was that? Vasiliev. His tyres have gone, I think, because he lost it on traction. And while that's happening, Maguire is trying to attack Zaharov. Little bit of contact, but Maguire is ahead. No, Zaharov's
coming inside. Back at him. Oh, this is where the guys had a bit of argy-bargy last time round. It's on hammer and tongs between these guys. Zaharov taking a very defensive line there into 13, I think it was.
He's gone wide, he's nearly in the barrier, and there was also a little bit of contact between Kulak and Vasiliev into the same corner there. It's all kicking off as the option tyres begin to wear.
So Chatsapancelis is on new primes, Zaharov is on old primes. So in fact, Chatsapancelis is a pit stop up on Zaharov.
Alvarez is into the pit wall. He's going to go into the pits, make the final left-hander into the pit lane. He's into the wall. He's up on the wall. He's in an invisible part of the track. His rear wing's gone. That's race over, my friend.
On my screen, he's still got the rear wing. No, he hasn't. He's lost the rear wing. Yep, that's the end of that one. Stoyan Barbakov also into the pits, a little bit more cleanly than, unfortunately, Alvarez. He will, if he's hoping the rear wing gets replaced, and it may get replaced, but it's going to take a long time. He'll need to turn his engine off, or it will overheat. These cars, unlike road cars, do not have fans on their radiators. So Barbakov now leaving, Stoyan Barbakov now leaving the pit lane after an uneventful pit stop.
I think there may be an issue for the Invictus Motorsport team, unless I'm seeing things here. It looks like Eric Kulak has got the same grid slot as Alvarez, who was repairing his damage, and Kulak has lost out a massive amount of time there.
Very unfortunate. So Callis still circulating on these option tyres. I think we're certainly looking at a two-stop from Callis. There's no doubt about it. Danny Van Der Neet has pitted. So
where's Christoph Schoer then, Dave? Where is he?
He's at the tail end of Sector 3. Only got 2 corners to go, and Schoer will be onto pit straight. I think Van Der Neet's okay. Schoer is halfway down pit straight. Van Der Neet is just entering, but it's such a slow pit exit line. No, he's got him. Van Der Neet is clear of Schoer.
I've got to admit, the amount of laps these Netrex guys have been able to do on their option tyres is absolutely phenomenal. That could potentially put them onto a two-stop strategy. If their tyre wear's that good on the options, if it's the similar on primes, they're in a fantastic situation.
It's got to be a two-stop strategy from here, because he's almost done 1/3 distance on the options. So he'll only do 1 prime stint the way he's looking.
Yep, Luke Maguire, with cars having pitted around him now, has managed to get himself up to 7th place. He's right behind Petter Schultz, who pitted not long ago for his prime tyre. But Luke Maguire will be on much lower fuel load now, so may have an opportunity to attack. He's heading down the long straight, the main straight, where DRS would usually be available, but we don't have DRS. Some guys like it, some guys don't. Either way, we've not got it. Maguire looking up the inside, and Schultz defends it beautifully. Oh, Maguire gives him a little bit of a touring car nudge, but manages to hold station. Sander Callas pits.
Callas, our leader, has pitted. Sander Callas has pitted, and in the meantime, Todor Vasilev has pitted safely and exiting pit lane now. He's cleared pit lane. Sander Callas has taken primes, as we would expect, and he's now exiting pit lane, and Sergei Eras is just entering pit lane, so Sergei Eras won't be any threat to him. So Callas entered the pits in P1, is leaving the pits in P1, reminiscent of Journey Simicic's fantastic drive here last year for his maiden win. So Eras has been passed by a couple of cars. Sergei Eras has gone for options.
Interesting. Options. If he's done 19 laps, he's doing an option prime on a two-stop.
He must be.
That'd be fantastic if he is. That tyre wear for him is also fantastic. The biggest winner that I've seen from pit stops or strategy at the moment has been DeWald Nell. Manages to get himself away from all of the traffic, all of the battling, up to 5th place, and a nice gap to 6th place Petter Schultz.
Well, indeed, because he was running in P9 for the front end of that stint. So to exit in P5 is good planning. Luke Maguire has entered the pits. In fact, he's leaving the pits now on a fresh set of options, and maybe even a slight front wing adjustment. Although, as we've said before, I think you've told me before, Luke likes a car that's fairly pointy.
I believe so, yeah. I know Adam Maguire does, and people often mention about his oversteer, but he does like a car where the front end goes where it wants to. Dmitry Zaharov nearly into the barrier, pushing ever so hard on what are now his worn Brian tyres. Turn 9, I think that was, a little late on the brakes and very nearly into the barrier. Luke tends to like a little bit more of a balanced car, but I mean, this is a circuit though, Dave, where you can have a perfectly balanced car, but if your right foot is a little bit more eager than usual than you've been when you've been practicing, all of a sudden you've got an oversteery car, because on every traction zone you're just trying to get that little bit extra, but the car doesn't want to give it to you.
Well, absolutely, and that's the thing that's really apparent on this circuit, that you've just got to have that patience of getting the car pointing straight ahead before you start to give it full beans, or even give it anything like full beans, giving it 3/4 throttle when you've still got the car a bit twisted and you haven't got the thing pointed in the correct direction. And the rear just starts to misbehave and starts to overheat. And Dmitry Zaharov, as we speak, is entering pit lane, and his tyres were looking very second-hand, I must say. But he's done 20 laps now on that set of prime tyres, so he can look forward to a period now of being a little bit quick, a little bit like Sergei Eras. And Sergei, in fact, is in a good position now. He's got clear air ahead of him. He's on options. This will be a nice moment for Sergei. He should have a car that's feeling pretty darn good, and plenty of air in front of him. So I'm going to have a quick look at his lap times. He was running 1:42s, mid 1:42s. We'll have a bit of a look and see what sort of lap times he does once he's managed the timed lap after his pit stop. Randu Muru has pitted in P11, and he's taken on options. So he's gone from a prime tyre to an option tyre, ran 20 laps on the prime.
Maguire, after his stop, he's on options now, but he's got 5 seconds to Barbukov ahead. Barbukov on prime tyres. It's going to be a bit of hard work for him. Zaharov's come out in 10th place, not just ahead of Rando Muru, quite far ahead of Rando, unfortunately. I mean, this is going to be a bit of an odd one, Dave. If we have got guys on 2 stops, other guys on 3 stops, obviously we're not going to know the full extent of how it's going to play out until the latter stages of the race. But I know that in real F1, one of the reasons why they've not shortened this particular race is because of the unpredictability of those last 10-15 laps, the last 20-30 minutes, where the drivers are exhausted, and the drama that could happen. So, I mean, even Sander Kallas has got a nice, comfortable 6.5 second lead. If he loses concentration for a split second, if he thinks about having a date with his girlfriend later on and how he's going to celebrate his win, he could be trying to work out how he's going to tell her that he just binned it.
Exactly. And Sergei Heras, we were keeping an eye on his lap times. He's done a PB for a lap, but Luke Maguire has done a massive purple lap, a 1:41.3. That's the fastest lap of the race so far. So Luke Maguire is having had a pretty torrid old time in that opening stint on the prime. Luke Maguire is really enjoying these options, and lo and behold, he's coming up on the back of Barbukov.
So, yeah, I mean, that gap's going to come down rapidly. I'm just having a quick look at Kulak going side by side with Muru. He manages to make the move. It's Vasiliev. Kulak makes the move on Vasiliev, but they've got to be aware Sander Kallas is right up their gearbox, right behind them. They have to be aware of the blue flags, and it looks like Vasiliev gets out of the way beautifully. No holding up of Sander Kallas whatsoever.
We've got a bit of a battle brewing now between Maguire and Barbukov, so that might be a good place for us to have a bit of a look with our cameras. Maguire is absolutely flying now on these options. Barbukov is on primes, and so Maguire should have the upper hand. Well, absolutely should have the upper hand. And yeah, Barbukov is on his second prime stint, so he's liking the primes in the first stint. He's gone primes again. So Luke's going to have pace in hand. And his car actually seems nicely planted now. His setup is perhaps just that optimised a little bit more for the option tyre, and he is really giving it some. Barbukov sort of being a bit unusual there with his choice of line, but Maguire dives under him in the final corner. Barbukov coming back at him into turn 1, but Maguire is quick enough to make sure he's well clear. So that was a pretty good fight, pretty aggressive but fair fight between those two guys, and Maguire is now off. And he's now got open road ahead of him, 15 seconds worth of open road, and some tyres that he's feeling really good on.
Yeah, I've just seen an interesting situation. You're right with that battle that was happening. Definitely the closest battle out there at the moment. I was keeping an eye on Arek Kulak because he's still got Sander Kalas right behind him. And I saw a car was going rather slow. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's someone who's another lap down. No, it was Rando Muru, who way before Kalas is even near him, thinks, you know what, I'm going to get out of the way, going to cause no trouble, but loses the position to Kulak.
Oh, no. Well, that's the thing. You've got to watch out for people doing that sneaky. It was Max Verstappen was the master of that at Monaco in his first season. He was just dived in behind the leader and was just following the leader through on the blue flags. And you offer just a little bit too much manners, and someone you're racing is going to go, yeah, I'll have a piece of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Peter Schultz pitted before George Chatsapantelis, I believe, and George is on slightly fresher prime tyres, maybe a slightly higher fuel load, but he's only 3 seconds behind Peter Schultz and can see him right ahead of him. Peter Schultz in a fantastic 6th place at the moment, but yeah, all going to pan out later on in this race. Luke Maguire, you mentioned about him having the fastest lap, Dave. He's got a massive amount of free air in front of him, plenty of time to pump in the best laps possible. Arek Kulak, is he still ahead of Sander Kalas?
He is,
yes, he is.
Kulak is on options, Kalas is on primes, but Kulak, he is holding him up now. Sanders able to do a 44.1. Kulak's last lap was a 44.6. And so Kulak might be thinking, well, I'm on the options, I can stay ahead of him, but in fact it is time now for him to move because his dirty air is starting to cause issues for Sander Kalas. And if he doesn't move quite smartly, he's going to find the race director penalising him after the event. Sanders weaving around to try and make himself very, very apparent in his mirrors. And Kulak now moves left, but he doesn't lift adequately.
I mean, let's face it, he's got to get out of the way. Yeah, he's ended up making Sander Kalas cut the corner, and I'm not surprised that Sander Kalas has kind of gone like 2-finger signal and carried on driving. I mean, it's one of those where a driver could say, well, I've not been waved blue flags, but as soon as you are, you don't mess about, you get out of the way. And Sander Kalas is showing his disgust there, I think, at the new guy. I mean, obviously, you kind of give a little bit of leeway, and that's why I think Sander Kalas, for the first lap or two, would have been like, okay, I'll make myself visible, I'll let him know I'm here, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, it's like, come on, time to get out of the way now.
Yeah, it's just that thing you've got to realise when you're about to be lapped by somebody that you're not in the same race as them, and the race of somebody who's leading takes precedence over the race of somebody who's in 11th. So even if you're feeling that, well, I'm on the faster tyre and I'm as fast as this bloke, well, guess what? If you weren't in front of him, you're probably not as fast as him, and as we'll see now, Sandy will start to pull away, and that is the delay that was being caused. So it's a learning curve, and I'm sure Kulak looks as though he's able to handle the car quite well, but he just needs to have that little bit of extra situational awareness to not cause problems, particularly when he's not in a battle, unlike that other driver who was disadvantaged because someone who was fighting drove past him. Kulak is not in an on-track battle, so he can afford to be very, very helpful and polite to the race leader.
Just a heads up as well to the viewers, you may actually get to see replays. Apologies for this, told you I wasn't awake. You may actually get to see replays, but visually on the screen it won't say replay. So some of the stuff that we may mention that the broadcaster will miss, he may show you or have shown you throughout the course of the race. Just want to mention quickly though, Dave, the guy in 4th place, Sergi Eras, he's got option tyre. He's closing in that gap quite nicely because he was 24 seconds behind the leader. He's now 18 and a half.
Yeah, well, in fact, Sergei is having a lovely moment on these fresh options. He's coming up against Backmark and now Todor Vasilev, and Vasilev did a very, very nice job of moving out of the way. He lifts just enough in an acceleration zone, and that's a copybook manoeuvre. What you want to do is in an acceleration zone, coming out of a corner where everyone's got plenty of options, plenty of room, you just short shift ever so slightly, get well out of the way, and probably going to cost yourself half a second at the most in lap time. But it's when people decide to pull funky moves in braking zones and mid-corner that disasters happen.
I mean, the thing is as well, I mean, on a circuit like this, I mean, I've got an update for a few people in a moment on about what's happening on track, but on a circuit like this, if you're heading down the start-finish straight and you can see that there is a car a few seconds away from you, behind you, that you're going to have to let through soon. If they're going to catch you up in sector 3, you don't let them through in sector 3, you let them through before. You don't wait till after, you let them through before. So even if it's before you get waved a blue flag, you've got to think, right, they're going to be on my gearbox in sector 3, I'll let them through now.
Yeah, exactly. It's something to practice and be aware of, and done well, you're not going to inconvenience their race or your race.
Exactly.
But Luke Maguire, by the way, is still the fastest guy
That's
on the
who
track.
I was going to update everybody on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is fast, and he's catching Georg Chatsipantelis, although George is losing ground from Petter Schultz at the moment.
And Sergey's still flying as well. Last time around was a 143 flat, although Sander, now that he's free, is doing a 143 or 197, and so significantly quicker. Todor Vasilev is into the pits for a tyre change, and he's going for primes.
I must admit, I'm a little bit concerned at the moment for Christoph Schoer. He pitted before Danny van der Neet, he pitted before Sander Kallas. He lost time on the both of them. He's now on a prime tyre where it's going to be a little bit older, but looking at the length of stint that those guys up at the front did, I think they're going longer, so they're going to have more fuel on. So I'm a little bit concerned at the moment for Christoph Schoer that he's not going to be able to attack the front two at all. And I think Sander Kallas may still be raging a little bit, because the gap to Danny van der Neet has come down now to just under 3 seconds. So Sander needs to make sure he keeps concentrated out there.
Todor Vasilev had only done a handful of laps on that previous set of tyres, so it was probably 5 or 6 laps. So I don't quite know why he decided to pit, unless, for example, he hadn't managed his fuel load. There's potential that perhaps he took tyres on board but didn't put enough fuel on board. But
that's true, because didn't he have to pit? No, he didn't pit early for damage, did he? But yeah, if he got his fuel load wrong, that would be a little awkward for him. Christoph Schoer, is he catching up to Danny van der Neet? Has Van der Neet just lost a little bit of time? I think he has, about a second.
Yeah, they're lapping at similar pace. Sander Kallas didn't have a fantastic lap last time around. Maybe he's just had to pass somebody again.
I have just seen, it looks like Alec Kulak has had the message from his engineers or team boss saying stay out of the way of everybody. Best way to do it. I mean, it's many occasions it's a simple respect thing. Luke Maguire is ahead of Georg Chatsipantelis. I think that may have been a not fighting for position on that one, with Luke on the option tyre and having been catching up quickly. And George, yeah, he's been losing ground to Petter Schultz.
Yeah, there was some polite conversation between various team officials in the stream chat. One team member saying to another manager, please get your melon out of the way sooner. And I think that might have been talking about one of his drivers, I'm not sure. By the way, viewers, if you do have any questions you want to ask, and I know a lot of you who are watching the stream are very experienced drivers and may not need to ask Dave Paling or myself, David O'Reilly, anything at all. But if you do have any questions you wish to ask, please don't hesitate. We'll try to keep an eye on, as the race develops, try to keep a bit of an eye on the chat. And so just use the hashtag AskFSR, and we will do our utmost between us to answer you.
That we will. We don't know everything, but we can always make stuff up. I was having a quick look at De Waldenel. He's going to have to be careful of Petter Schultz, who's only 6 seconds behind him. Strategy could play a big part on their race, but I don't think De Wald's going to be able to do anything about Sergi, because I think Sergi is doing potentially one less stop. I mean, my concern, as I mentioned earlier, about Christoph Schoer is if Christoph Schoer is doing an extra stop compared to Sergi Eras, all of a sudden his third place comes under threat.
Wade Marc Antonio pitting. I'll be back in 10 seconds, Dave.
No problem. Let's see, Petter Schultz and Luke Maguire, what's the gap between them? 7 seconds, so keep an eye on that one, folks. It's going to be difficult to see what Luke Maguire's going to be able to do anything about that. But De Wald now in the Deltec lovely blue new livery car, actually, recently. I've got to admit, I do like it. It's almost a little bit like a neon raving car, but I do like it. Not that I've ever been to a rave, but I wouldn't be surprised if it glows in the dark. But yeah, I mean, De Woldenel having a fantastic race at the moment, not quite able to keep pace with Sander Kallas, Danny van der Neet or Christoph Schoer or Sergi Eras. But obviously Eras has been benefited by running the option tyre. Now let's see, second pit window, when's that going to open? Well, for the leaders who pitted, lap 19, then probably around about lap 40. If they're going to do option prime, or a little bit maybe 42, 43 if they're going to do prime option, or an option run at the end. For anyone that's done option, apart from Sergi Eras, it's going to be around about lap 30, so pit window is opening up again. Now, most of the field getting quite spread out at the moment, but Singapore can do that, and so can multiple strategies. And it looks like that's just seen Dmitry Zaharov going slow past an Invictus Motorsport car that appears to have no rear wing, no front wing. That could just be visual for me, but no, it does look like he's going very slow. That's Wade Marcantonio. Looks like he's had a little bit of a moment somewhere. He's going to be returning back to the pits, having recently made a pit stop. So unfortunately for Invictus Motorsport, not the best of racers here in Singapore.
And bizarrely enough, you can drive the car with no front and rear wing. It just becomes a sort of 800 horsepower Formula Ford. But driving it with a front wing on board and no rear wing is next to impossible. So you're better off losing both. In fact, if you lose your rear wing, best thing to do is run into a wall and take off the front wing and make it drivable.
Are you intentionally telling people to crash, Dave?
No, and now it looks like Sander Kallas has got his rhythm and got his mojo back, Dave, because he's now asserting himself a little bit, and we've got a 4.5 second gap to Danny van der Neet.
I believe the viewers have been able to have a look at the replay of what happened with Wade. I mean, it's his first race, and I mean, of the first races to attend, I can honestly say Singapore is not the easiest. I made my debut at Singapore. It wasn't easy, not at all.
Yes, I can see that now. Yeah, he had a big amount of throttle oversteer as he entered the long straight of Raffles Boulevard, and I think it was partly due to him being very polite and getting out of the way of one of the other drivers. It might have been Luke Maguire, and that put him off his normal line, and unfortunately had a big throttle oversteer moment, which ended his race. So yeah, the good intentions were there, good situational awareness to stay out of the way, so that was to his credit. And these are the races which just give you fantastic experience. And diving into the ACE grid is diving sort of into the deep end, really. So,
oh yeah, it is. I mean, even for pro guys, jumping up into ACE is not an easy thing.
I think Kulak might have been double stacked again there. Kulak was stuck behind Marcantonio and has gone off, I think, to do another lap. They might have been double stacked in pit lane again. If that's happened to Kulak twice, he will be a little bit frustrated by that all lap.
He will. I mean, it's possible that they've both picked the same car to use, same liveried car, which is why they've got the same grid slot, which would be unfortunate. Okay, George Chatzipantelis into the pits, getting rid of his prime tyres, and it looks like it might be another set of prime tyres going on. But I'm just been keeping an eye on Luke Maguire. I mentioned a few laps ago that he was 7 seconds behind Petter Schultz. He's only just closed that down a little bit on Petter Schultz. It was staying at 6 to 7 seconds, and I think that was the difference of option tyres going off, prime tyres holding their own a little bit, because when did Maguire pit? About lap 19, so he's done 10-11 laps on his option tyres, so they are going to start going off now. But Petter Schultz he's on low fuel, so his car's going to be pretty quick. So even though Maguire's had the fastest lap of the race, he can't just rapidly close that gap down at the moment.
Yes, he's got to do it by inch, hasn't he? 5 seconds away. If it looks like he's enjoying the car, I'll just have a bit of a look at some of his lap times. He's 11 laps in. In fact, funnily enough, I was looking at Sergi Eras, and I was thinking, he's 11 laps into this option stint, but his first option stint, I think, ran for 19 laps.
Sergi Eras, yeah. I mean, I was just mentioning while you were away, Dave, the pit window for the likes of Sander Callas and Danny van der Neet with the prime tyres, the pit window is probably not going to open up until about lap 40. But it's going to be about the same for Sergi Heras because of how long he was able to take his option tyre.
Yeah, well, Maguire certainly came out hot on this option stint, and how long he's going to keep them going is going to be an interesting question. His first stint was a 19-lap stint on the prime. I'm not getting good tyre data, in fact, from his stints. He's 12 laps into an option stint. If he ran 19 on the prime, I've got the feeling that Luke was probably not so far away from another stop, because he's at about 2/3 of the distance of his prime stint. And
you might be right then. If he is going to be stopping soon, he's going to have to be very, very careful, because with Georg Chatsipantelis having pitted recently, there's kind of a little bit of a window. Kulak, DNF, he's out of the race.
Yeah, you see that. I'll go back and give you a little report on that one.
No problems. Yeah, Luke Maguire, if he pits now, he could potentially be coming out between Zaharov, I keep getting his name wrong, sorry, Zaharov and Chatsipantelis.
Yes, Kulak just got a little bit wide on the exit of turn 8, which is that very slow right-hander after the left at the end of Raffles Boulevard, and just got a little bit wide, caught the barrier, and that was it, game over. And that's one of those corners which just make you that little bit, your heart rate gets up that little bit every time you approach that corner. It's a tricky one to spot the braking mark at the best of times. So we have 10 runners left, 32 laps into our 61-lap event. So we've passed, and Luke Maguire, we were telepathic. Luke Maguire has pitted, and he's taking on primes again. So I've got the feeling we're going to see prime option from Luke Maguire, because he's exactly at half distance. So he certainly made those options work in terms of pace, but took a bit of a toll in terms of tyre wear.
Is he going to get out ahead of Zaharov? He needs to be ahead of Zaharov.
It's going to be very close. Zaharov is right onto him on warm tyres. Maguire on cold primes, and anyone who's driven these cars know what that's like. Maguire will have to be much more tentative into the right-hander onto Raffles Boulevard, but he seems to be pulling away okay. We know Dmitry Zaharov has a very fast car in a straight line, and he won't take any prisoners, and it's Groundhog Day. We've got Zaharov and Maguire battling again as they did for the whole first stint of this race, and we're now 33 laps in. And Maguire will just be thrilled, I think, to be seeing that Zaharov's in his mirrors and not out in front of him.
That he will. Just to update the viewers, Sergi Heras, who's in 4th place, has lost a little bit of ground on Sander Callas, but to be fair, Sander Callas is pulling away from everybody at the moment. But yeah, Sergi Heras on those option tyres, they are going to be suffering again now. We'll see him in the pits in about 5 laps time, I think.
So strategically, Zaharov, I think, has sort of got the upper hand here, really, because both these guys are going to stop once again. They're both going to stop for options. But Zaharov, I think, is going to stop a fair bit earlier than Maguire, because Zaharov is definitely on a 2-stop, Maguire on a 3-stop, prime option. Zaharov has done 2 prime stints, so he's taken his medicine for the first 2/3 of this race. So he will pit in probably another 8 laps, 8 to 9 laps, and grab options for the run home. So he's going to have a pretty quick car around about the time Maguire does his next stop. It's going to be an interesting one to see that one play out, Dave.
It is. I mean, I mentioned when we touched on strategy a little bit earlier on, I said, like, my mind has been blown trying to work out the right strategy for this track in Pro, in ACE, for WC, because there are options, but it's working out, okay, which one is the best, which one is the fastest. And you may have one that goes, this is clearly faster. It might be a 3-stop, this is clearly faster. But if you're in traffic, it's not faster. So there's so many factors, and it's so difficult. I mean, the only people that are really be able to just dictate what they want to do, as we had in Monza, is the leader, Sander Callas. He can do whatever he wants. He can look at the times. He can afford to slow down a second a lap, look after his tyres for 5 laps, and still have a 1.5 second lead. So, yeah.
Indeed. I mean, and the strategic priorities for you are going to depend a lot on what you're trying to do. If you're one of these top 3 guys and you're fighting over which step of the podium you want to be on, it's going to all be about the ultimate, race time. To determine your strategy. If your goal is to maybe come in the top 10 and hope to stay within a lap of these guys, you're going to perhaps take an approach of, well, I want to be on a tyre and a fuel load that feels really good under me, so I know I can keep doing lap after lap and execute 61 laps without any issues, and that's going to produce my best result. And you know what? That's my mindset for tomorrow. I just want to have a fuel load and a tyre that I'm happy with, and so I can keep circulating, stay off the walls, and hopefully there'll be so much carnage and so much attrition rate that will end up yielding a good finish.
Your game place. I mean, another factor could be the amount of time people have had to practice. A driver who's had hardly any time to practice is not going to be able to drive a tyre-saving drive as well as somebody who has practiced that. So it's
amazing. It's amazing the difference it makes. It took me 100 laps to start feeling anything like comfortable here, and after that sort of lappage, it's a bit like Monaco. When you first go to Monaco, it is so stressful just getting the car around, and then you start to commit your gearing to memory, your gear shift points, your braking points to memory, and then that all starts to happen autonomously, and then you start to work on subtleties of weight transfer and how quickly or not you're releasing the brake and how much counter steer you're applying before you get back on throttle. And after a while you're just working on those little subtleties, and the big things are happening autonomously, and that's when you start to lap well.
And someone that's lapping well at the moment is Christoph Skur. He's catching up to Danny Van Der Neet a little bit here, and I think the closer he's getting, the more confident he's getting in the fact that he is gaining time on him. But I still do fear that Skur may have an additional pit stop to make. I mean, for Christoph Skur, it may have been a case of looking after his tyres a little bit, but then realised, hang on a minute, Eras, if he's on a pit stop less, I've got to push. And I mean, there are so many different factors to pace, and someone said to me a few days ago, it's not all about pace around here, it's about making your tyres last. So if you want to go a 2-stop, yes, you do need a decent pace, but you've got to be able to drive in a way that can allow that to happen. And I mean, you mentioned that you did 100 laps before you were sort of comfortable. I went to do a prime tyre wear test last night and spent 2.5 hours on the option tyres because I wasn't comfortable with my setup. So there was no point even looking at the prime. So there's such fine margins within the setups at times that gives you confidence. And like I say, sometimes you just have to go, you know what, I'll carry 50 litres less fuel and not worry about my tyre wears, do an extra pit stop and push. Whereas other times you have to stick at it and go, you know what, I can make this work, let's do it.
Well, indeed, and there are so many setup parameters you can play with. I mean, I spent an evening just working on damper settings and just finally worked out I just couldn't extract anything better out of the damper settings than what I had.
It's frustrating like that, though, isn't it? I mean, these are things that new people may experience as well. Like they'll go to an FSR server or their own single player mode with the FSR car, and they'll work on the setup, and they might sit there and go, I've spent 2.5 hours on this bit of the setting, it's done absolutely bugger all. Yeah. But you can't think like that. What you have to do is go...
Optimize one parameter, and that might be slow bump dampers or fast bump dampers, and then if you're not finding any pace there, you've got to move into something else and move into another little.
But what you've got to do, you've kind of got to have that mentality of, okay, I spent 2.5 hours and realised I can't maximise that. I've learnt something. I can't maximise it there. I'll move on to the next thing. But it's very easy, as Luke Maguire is past Stoyan Barbukov, because Barbukov is in the pits. It's very easy to sort of sit there and go, oh, this is awful, rah. But you've got to look at it as every time you're on the track, you learn something, even if you're hitting barriers.
Yeah, absolutely you do. So Zarov also in the pits.
Yes. Enough of our life stories. Zaharov from Barbukov into the pits, and this is crucial for George Chatsipantelis, who has already made his pit stop earlier on. He's going to come out next to Barbukov. No, he's just ahead of Barbukov. So George Chatsipantelis, who nearly loses the rear of the car, I think may still have another pit stop to do, so has got to make his little bit of clear air ahead of him count. But he's had a messy turn 5, and that's going to compromise him now, because Barbukov on option tyres is going to look to attack him straight away. Is he going to move to the inside? Yes, he does. Is he going to be late on the brakes? He's going to try it. George gives him the room, but runs
him
wide.
Off the track, pressured him off the track. And George just rejoined, parked it on the apex. Oh wow, George is hanging on tooth and nail.
Yeah,
Barbukov showing a lot of judgment here, not being too hasty to get into this.
Both drivers
putting massive pressure on Chatsipantelis.
I don't know if there was a tiny little bit of contact there, or whether it was a problem under the brakes. I don't know. But I think
he was letting Van der Neat through too. P2
is there. Okay, that means that's Christoph Schoer right behind George Chatsipantelis as well then. So George was trying to adhere to the blue flags, maybe then loses the position.
Yeah, in truth, I think it was just a matter of time anyway. He was under some massive pressure from Barbukov. Now, Zarov has pitted much earlier than I thought. He did a 20-lap stint on primes, and then this stint, I think, was only 16, and he's come back out on options. So that's totally blown any theory I might have had about the way the rest of this race is going to unfold, because Zarov is going to have to stop again. He can't go to the end on this set of options.
I tell you what, I feel for George Chatsipantelis. He's just moved out of the way to let Christoph Schoer come past. Schoer gets past and peeled straight into the pit lane. Literally straight after the corner before the pit lane, George let him through, and Christoph into the pits. So Eras into the pits as well. I think Eras is going to the end. Christoph Schoer is going to have to make these prime tyres go to the end as well. If he's going to have any chance of beating Sergi Eras, he's going to have to go long on them.
Eras will definitely go to the end on these, because he did 20 laps on his options. So he's going to have a ball. It's going to do it very easily on these primes. Well, not easily, but he's got 23 laps to do. He did 19 on his first set of options, so it'll be interesting to see how much pressure he can exert on Schoer.
Here's a little bit of a story for you though.
Neil, in the meantime, still got his name carved on P5, so it's been a slightly perhaps lonely and unspectacular race, but a well-judged race from the South African driver.
Danny Van der Neat has lost a massive amount of time to Sander Callas.
Can Peter Schulze exert any pressure on De Wolde Nel, I wonder?
He may be able to, Dave, but as I was about to say, Danny Van der Neat, he's been stuck behind Barbukov, who's a lap down for a whole lap and a half. It's lost Danny Van der Neat 4 seconds.
Schulze is quicker than De Wolde Nel at the moment, both in terms of best lap and most recent lap, although Nel has just done a PB for Sector 1.
I think I may have been having a few microphone issues there.
I was having sound issues. I think I inadvertently muted mine, so I wasn't hearing you. You might have heard me.
Sorry, I was saying that I heard you. I was saying that Danny Van der Neat was held up by Barbukov for a whole lap and a half, and it's cost him about 4 seconds.
Well, Barbukov will get a penalty for that, which is a shame, because he's going to be in the top 10 anyway, because there's only 10 runners left. But this is the learning curve, and this is why under normal, Schulze, by the way, is entering the pits.
That's crucial between him and Luke Maguire, because Luke Maguire has recently pitted, as we know, on the prime tyre, and he was about 5-6 seconds behind Peter Schultz. But I've got a feeling that Schultz will have gained time on Luke Maguire through this phase of pit stops, and Peter Schultz can probably, on the prime tyre that he's just put on, get to the end.
Yes, well, he should be able to 22 laps from here. And Callas has got some breathing space now. He's got 9 seconds to Danny Van der Neat after Van der Neat has been held up.
It's close, sorry. Maguire and Petter Schulz, Maguire, totally sideways. Or was that lag? That may have been lag. My apologies if you saw that, viewers. You may see a replay of it. But yeah, ever so close on the pit exit. Petter Schulz is ahead. But unless Maguire's going to the end on this set of tyres, Petter Schulz doesn't really need to worry about it. Danny van der Neet into the pits, I believe, Dave.
Yes, indeed, van der Neet pitting and taking on a fresh set of primes. So he'll be running to the end as well. Now, most of these lead cars are now on track and in a straight fight to the end, all on the same tyres. So Danny van der Neet will still enter in exit the pit lane in a very comfortable. Well, hang on, how comfortable? Schoer is on the pit straight. Schoer is on the pit straight, and it's going to be very close between him and van der Neet as they round turn 3. But van der Neet holds position, but certainly Christoph Schoer is going to smell some blood, smell some opportunity here. He's on warm tyres. Danny van der Neet's just put on the prime. And for those first few corners, they just do not feel very friendly at all.
No, I mean, we spoke about it on, I think it was the WC broadcast, about how the prime tyres can take a couple of laps to warm up. And I think that's one of the reasons why Petter Schulz is under a bit of pressure from Luke Maguire. But if Luke Maguire's on a lower fuel load, he's got to make that count. But it's just the nature of this circuit, as we've said before. Petter Schulz, big sideways into the penultimate corner, showing Luke Maguire how good he is at drifting, but not how good he is at going down the main straight. As Maguire tries to go around the outside, can't do it, tries to switch back, gives him a nudge. That's going to compromise the both of them.
Well, that was very good defensive positioning of Schulz's car, but which either caught Maguire by surprise, or Maguire decided to just tap him as you might do in a go-kart, just to show him you're there. But you can't do that many times without losing end plates. Maguire having another big go and might have him, although Schulze, full credit to Schulze, he just drove a very nice line to the outside and maintained position. This is good defence from Schulze, very impressive.
Well, I do know that in Hungary, Petter Schulz had a fantastic race there. A lot of action, attacking, defending. It was action-packed for the whole event. So I'm not surprised that he's good at defending. I'm just keeping an eye on Danny van der Neet and Christoph Schoer.
So you do that. I'll keep an eye on Maguire and Schulze.
Yep, Schoer just had a bit of a messy penultimate corner, lost a little bit of ground. But I do want to quickly mention, though, if Christoph Schoer has got another stop to do, Sergi Adas is only 12 seconds behind him at the moment. So Schoer needs to get past Danny van der Neet and pull ahead, or he needs to hope that Sergi Adas doesn't catch him up and he can attack him with options later on.
I can't see Schoer stopping, because he's only 3 laps into this prime stint, and on the last set he did 23 laps, so yeah, he's only got 21 laps to go. So it'll be a similar stint length to his last prime stint, so I don't think Schoer will be stopping. Hate to spoil that party. But Schulze is asserting himself here. He's not giving way to Maguire. I'm just on board with Maguire, and he's still looking down the barrel at Schulze's gearbox. But Schulze, is driving in a very stable manner, getting good exits. Van der Callis is just pitted. Van der Callis has just pitted for options. Oh, well, no, that's on schedule. He's done prime option, so he's going to run options home from here. 20 laps. His first stint was 19 laps.
Petter Schulz, Luke Maguire, what's happening there? They're side by side. Oh, on the exit at turn 7. So Luke Maguire trying to get up the inside now at turn 8. Side by side, they're going to be into turn 9. Schulz has the lead. Well, not the lead, but he's ahead. But Luke Maguire may get a better run out of the corner. Schulz going defensive. Luke Maguire saying, I won that inside line. Compromised, little bit of contact to Maguire. Just misses the wall.
That was on the limit racing. Very, very close racing from these guys, and just a little bit of side-by-side wheel contact, which, is a racing incident. But Maguire came off a little bit second best out of that, which is what tends to happen if your front wheels tap the other guy's rear wheels.
Yeah, it doesn't tend to do a pit manoeuvre, does it? It tends to... Danny van der Neet just very nearly lost it on the corner, turn 7, on the exit curb. He's now slowing turn 8. Christoph Schoer all over the back of him now. Danny van der Neet, someone send him new underwear, because he's definitely going to need them. That's for sure.
Fantastic. 42 laps into this race, we have two massive battles between these four drivers. Schoer and Van der Niet, Maguire and Schulze. Fabulous racing. This is what we came here for.
The thing is, that moment that Danny Van der Niet just had then as well, that could play on his mind, because now Christoph Schoer is even closer, so he's got to try and push that a little bit harder. But if he does, and he gets on that same curb again, it could result in worse. But he did very, very well to save it. I can tell you that now. I do believe replays are trying to be shown of it, or may have been shown of it now. But yeah, he definitely gained a little bit of weight in the cockpit on that one, shall we say.
Now Maguire is pushing like mad to try to get Schulze under pressure. Maguire's car is just being a little bit tail happy on exit, which tends to happen if you're urging the car forward and trying to get that power down before you're perpendicular to the racetrack, as it were. And Schulze's rear end of his car just seems glued to the track, and he's just racing his line, saying, "Well, that's okay. Bring it to me if you want, but I'm driving my line here." And so it's an intriguing battle between these two cars.
Danny Van der Niet, Christoph Schoer heading up towards turn 6 now. Danny Van der Niet looks like he's composed himself, opened himself a nice little gap again. Not fearing riding the curb. Sorry, it was the turn 7 curb he got on, I believe. If George was trying to show a replay of that, I got way too excited on that one.
Meantime, Maguire is still all over Peter Schulze like a cheap suit, really sort of menacing the gearbox of Peter, and Peter just continuing on relentlessly, and Maguire hanging on to a car that's moving around a hell of a lot on track. So this battle is far from over. As they're entering now turn 3, getting themselves set up for the long straight down Raffles Boulevard. Maguire will be wanting to have a better exit the next time around, because he needs a fantastic exit if he's going to. And Maguire does get a pretty clean exit this time. I think he's going to have a little bit more proximity as they enter turn 7. But Schulze is just far enough ahead to be able to drive the classic racing line and maintain good corner speed. Maguire's car moving around incredibly. As soon as he puts the gas down, as soon as he gets on throttle, Maguire is just battling incredible oversteer. It's amazing the job that he's doing keeping it under control. It must be incredibly tense when you're trying to go quick and the car's doing that under you. But at the moment, Schulze's car seems to be a little bit more stable, and Maguire doesn't quite have the pace to really get the job executed at this stage. However, we have still 17 laps to go in this event. So the first man to blink, I can see there, I think we're on board with Luke Maguire. It's fantastic racing at the moment.
Don't forget as well though, Dave, you were thinking if he's doing prime option, he's going to have another stop to do. And if he does stop, he's going to come out between Barbukov and Chatsapantelis again. So yeah, potentially got to get a shift on. I mean, this is why he's trying as hard as he can, I think, to get past Schulze, because he's got to gain that time.
Well, that's a very interesting point, because Schulze will not be stopping. Whereas Maguire's only 11 laps in. Maguire is already 11 laps into this stint, and Schulze is only 5 laps in. So Schulze is just going to be driving this same tyre the whole event. So yeah, Maguire, if he doesn't clear him and really pull a gap, which really, I just can't see that happening at this stage, pulling the sort of gap. Although Maguire might be thinking more in terms of clearing Barbukov, getting a pit stop ahead of Barbukov might be what's on Maguire's mind, and saying, "Look, Peter, let me through. I'm not racing you."
Could well be. Or Danny Van der Niet got himself a little bit out of shape. Christoph Schoer is closer than he's been.
Maguire, that was so. Oh dear me! What a tragic end. Maguire made a good attack into turn 7. They went around turn 7 side by side, and there was just a little bit of side-by-side wheel contact. Unfortunately, it tipped Maguire front wing first into the barrier. So now Maguire has got to drive the best part of a lap back and a lot of corners back to the pits with no front wing due to that fight with Schulze. And I don't think either driver really did anything untoward. I think it was just a big fight that was eventually someone was going to come off second best. And I think Had Schulze realised that Maguire had to do another stop, he might have been less concerned about letting him through or not letting him through. So in the meantime, Stoyan Barbakov can almost see Maguire. If we look out the front of Stoyan Barbakov's car, and we can see Maguire disappearing around the beginning turns of sector 3, and Barbakov in P7, and Maguire is pulled to the side, a very gentlemanly manoeuvre because these guys are racing for position. But Maguire, realising that he's a wounded soldier at the moment, his car's carrying damage.
Going to cut you off quickly, Dave. Christoph Schoer right on the back of Danny van der Neet. I know when Luke and Maguire and Peter Schultz had their little moment, I was going to cut in. That was only because Schoer had got close again, because Danny van der Neet made a little error going into the corners under the stadium. But Schoer is all over the back of him now. So with that battle, Maguire, Schultz kind of unfortunately coming to an end, I think now we may have to focus a little bit more on this Danny van der Neet, Christoph Schoer battle.
Yeah, 100%. Maguire has just had a new front wing fitted in the pits, and he will rejoin, and why not? He's still in for 10th place. But I tell you what, I'm surprised he didn't grab a set of options while he was in there. He stayed on the prime tyre, and I know that he was really enjoying the options, but I guess it's a 16-lap stint from home, and maybe he didn't quite want to do that many laps.
Yeah, I mean, if he was doing, 11, 12 laps on his options?
13, yeah. He was 13, so it was just a little bit far from home. So that was a hell of a battle those boys put on, and just a shame for Luke that it ended up with a bit of damage to his front wing. Back over to you.
I mean, it is possible as well. I mean, I did see a replay of the curb that he got on as well. There was the same curb that Danny van der Neet got on. So, I mean, it's one of those that may have been a racing incident, Luke being on the curb and Schultz maybe squeezing him a little bit. But, yeah, let's focus on Christoph Schoer, who... I don't want the commentators curse either of these guys, but these guys are doing very, very well. Or Danny van der Neet, a little bit deep into the hairpin. But yeah, I mean, the thing is... neither of these guys necessarily have to risk anything. What's the situation with these two in the championship, Dave? Because I know neither of these are in the top 2.
No, I'm going to look that up for you.
Thank you very much. So Christoph Schoer coming into the 3rd sector. I mean, he's been stuck. Go on, Dave.
Schoer has 103 points and van der Neet has 81. So Schoer is ahead of van der Neet, but he's in a big fight with Nell and Schmidt for 4th place. So Schoer needs every point he can get to try to overhaul Duold Nell. And
good. So how far behind Sergi Adas is he? Because obviously he's a position ahead of him now.
Van der Neet, you mean?
No, sorry, Christoph Schoer.
Schoer is on 103, and who was the other driver you asked about?
Sergi Adas.
139. They're in different
big
races.
Gap between the two of them. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Sergi Adas has kind of realised he's not going to catch the cars ahead. He's safe from attack behind. Just hold position. He gains more on Felix van Delft in the championship with Felix not racing. Sander Kallas, though, I mean, he's managed with his strategy and his pace, and also with van der Neet being under pressure here. Kallas has opened up an 18.5 second lead. It was 4 or 5 seconds before the last round of pit stops were done?
Yeah, certainly no more than 6 anyway. Yeah, no, he's really pulled a commanding lead on these guys now. Heras, by the way, he's gotten on quite well. I mean, he started in 6th place, ended the first lap in 6th anyway, and now he's got a very strong grip on P4. I wonder if Schultz can put any pressure on Duold Nell, because they're only separated by 4 seconds now, those guys.
Let's see, he might. Well, they've been separated by about 5 seconds for quite some time, while Schuster was under pressure from Maguire. Nell was kind of holding station. I had a look at what tyres they were on. No, Nell's still on the prime tyre, so he may be able, now that Peter Schultz is not being pressured, he may be able to close that gap in. There is another potential little fight brewing, and that's the Harov on option tyres and George Chatsipantelis on prime tyres. Yeah, Christoph Schoer still potential. Oh, a bit twitchy. Still potentially the closest for an attack on somebody at the moment. If he gets a good exit here, he's got an opportunity. But one thing I did notice is slipstream is not massive on this particular track. So he is gaining, but nowhere near enough to even have a look at throwing it up the inside.
Schulze, by the way, is going about half a second a lap quicker than Nell.
So he could catch him then.
With 14 laps to go and a 3.5 second gap. So on current pace, Schulze will be able to put Nell under quite a bit of pressure for 5th place. So Nell might be pleased with the company because he's pretty much been in clear air for most of this event. So, but perhaps not that sort of company.
No. Well, maybe Sergei Eras and DeWald Nell can have a bit of a formation drive round together. It might be the only time they've seen another car in this race. But I think Christoph Schoer, he may want to go and take a walk on his own in the woods at the moment, because he's been seeing nothing but the back of this Netrex car ahead of him. And it's a very tense situation, as I mentioned earlier on, because if Van der Neat makes a mistake, then Christoph Schoer has got to be either A, prepared to pounce, or B, prepared to avoid.
Did we just see her? Sorry, pardon. I was looking at the data here and something was flashing.
Oh, right, okay.
Zarov pitting again. Maybe he's dating somebody in the pit lane. Maybe he's got a girlfriend in there.
Maybe he might have. Maybe it's someone that works for one of the tyre companies, and he's got an extra bonus for the more tyres that he uses.
He'd only done 11 laps on that option stint, but I guess he'd looked at it and thought, well, I may as well split the difference and do similar stint lengths on the options at the end. He must just be liking the options more.
Yeah, must be. Now I'm trying to have a look at where sort of Van der Neat may be stronger than Schoer around the lap, and it's very nip and tuck everywhere, to be honest. I wouldn't say I've seen a particular corner where either driver is stronger, because whenever I've been looking in a gap like Van der Neat opens up a gap, well, next lap around, Schoer is able to close the gap in that corner, or it is very nip and tuck in that sense. So these guys doing an absolutely fantastic job out there at the moment. There's still 11 laps to go, and I mean, you mentioned, Dave, that you don't think Christoph Schoer is going to have to pit again, and I would hope that he doesn't have to. If he was going to have to, it would have to be within the next lap, really, to give himself a 10-lap stint to the end on the option. But I don't think we'll see him doing that.
Well, it's the sort of track also where if you've got two drivers who are pretty quick, pretty similar pace level and reasonably similar car setup, it is not easy to find a pass. And I think that's where the Maguire-Schulze battle was intriguing, because clearly they had very different car setups. Luke's car was set up a lot more oversteer, a lot more pointy, more on the nose, whatever term you want to use. And that was allowing him to get the front of his car in underneath Schulze on occasion. But while I say that, the gap now between Schulze and Nell has dropped from 4 seconds to 3 seconds with 12 laps to go. So that is brewing. That is brewing into quite a nice little fight in the dying laps.
Okay, Stoyan Barbukov has just made a pit stop, put on a brand new set of option tyres, and then clipped the barrier on his way out of the pits, unfortunately. So has damaged his front wing end plate. A bit of a shame for him on that. And the leaders of, not the leaders, but Van der Neat and Schoer are just ahead of him on the track. But I think with their pace, they'll still be able to pull away on old prime tyres. But, I mean, do you think Schulze is going to catch up to DeWald Nell? And do you think he's going to be able to do anything about it, Dave? Because we've not seen DeWald have to attack or defend throughout this race yet.
Well, the way Schulze is driving, he is driving so consistently, and he's just got a little bit of oversteer then as he heads up into the final double left. But he's got a car that looks to me that's got a very, very stable rear end, a car that's behaving super well, and he just did not put a foot wrong under a barrage of pressure from Maguire. And what I'm building up to is the point that if he arrives on your gearbox, it's a bit like getting crossed with a metronome on the other side of a room. You know, there's not much you can do about it. It's just going to keep ticking away. And I think that Schulze could exert a fair bit of pressure on DeWald Nell. So it's going to be interesting. I do think he will catch him because he's still lapping quicker. He's still lapping quicker than DeWald Nell. Last lap there wasn't much in it, but all the previous laps there's been the third to half a second in it. So unless Schulze starts to get a bit of white line fever and starts to see see Nell and get a bit target focused and stop driving his own race. But that incredible pressure that Luke Maguire put him under didn't rattle him. But his setup, of course, can end up can get more and more understeery as wear kicks in.
George Chatzipantelis into the pits. I'm guessing that'll be for a final run, maybe on a set of option tyres.
Yeah, exiting on options.
Christoph Schoer, Danny van der Neet still ever so. You were talking there about Peter Schulze coming under pressure, and viewers might be watching this thinking, "Oh, nothing's happening." You ask Danny van der Neet if nothing was happening in this race, because he is under so much pressure now. He knows he cannot afford to make the tiniest of errors, and that mental pressure is massive. And with that error that he made a little earlier on the curb weighing on his mind, he's done a fantastic job to compose himself and keep hold of his position at the moment. It's a very difficult situation for these drivers. And in these last 8 laps, you were talking, Dave, about sweaty drivers. And we don't mean a bit like sweaty FIFA players. We're on about like drivers so exhausted, they're soaked, their clothes are soaked, their seats are soaked, the works. It gets that tough, guys. That's the situation these guys are in now. They're going to have sweat pouring down their faces. They're not going to be able to take a breather to wipe their eyebrows. It's a very exhausting situation, and this is now the crucial part where mistakes could easily happen. So you have to focus all the more than you have done for the previous 52 laps.
Well, absolutely, and it's not like it's like building something. I mean, we don't have, as we mentioned at the opening of the broadcast, we don't have DRS, we don't have KERS, so there's no magic buttons. When you get on someone's gearbox and get within a second of them, you can't suddenly have a car that's 15 kilometres an hour faster than their car. We don't have those overtaking tools. So what you've got to do is just put the person under relentless pressure over a whole stint, and hopefully either your skill or the work you and your team have done in setting up your car can prevail in giving you a car that's more stable and slightly more reliable over that sort of stint length. But both of these boys are doing incredible effort to fight this close and this hard for this long. Is really, really incredible driving. The Schultz and Nell gap is stable at about 3.2. In fact, I think the old Nell has responded, because last time around they did the same lap time, almost the same lap time. I know there's 0.2 in it, 0.2, there's still a quarter of a second in it. So we're down now under the 3 second mark, but only just 2.995 second gap. So he's brought that down significantly. He's still got 9 laps to go. So he's only got to do a third of a second a lap to get on his gearbox. But in the words of the famous Murray Walker, catching is one thing, passing in another. But while we're all doing that, Callis has just done a 41.9 out the front in clear air on the options, and just demonstrating the pace that he's got in hand and enjoying this final stint.
Yeah, something I'm impressed with at the moment is, I'm guessing that Sergei Yaras has done the equivalent of turning the engine down. Well, he can't turn the engine down, he just don't drive as fast, because he's losing time. Oh, Barbukov and Zarahov, something going on there. That's because Barbukov's
I think Yaras just lapped Zarahov.
Well, Barbukov is into the pits with no front wing and massive suspension damage. His steering wheel is turned so much he could pretty much just use the accelerator to get around the track. What was I saying? Yes, I think he's eased off a bit, because he's not gaining on these guys. He's on the same tyres, similar fuel load. So I think Sergei Yaras is just playing I'm in fourth, I'll take that.
And I think Barbukov is just getting a feel of his car's steering rack, because wow, it is just looking. It's been a bit like being a Bronco rider riding a one-eyed bull at the moment for Stoyan Barbukov. The car just wants to turn left. He's got to turn hard right to make the thing go straight. I would not look forward to 9 laps in that car, but he's got a point. He can win a point in Formula SimRacing ACE if he can manage 9 laps, but if he can, well, good luck to him. But yeah, Yaras indeed, he's got 20 seconds clear air in front of him and 60 seconds clear air behind him. or thereabouts.
40.
40, sorry.
Yeah, that's
Can't
all
add
right.
up.
It's closer to 60 than 20 is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, he's. I think he's pretty comfortable where he is at the moment. Danny Van Der Nee's just had a very good final sector. Managed to open up a little bit of a gap now on Christoph Schoer. I mean, these guys. I mean, okay, people may be watching thinking, oh, I want to see overtakes. Yeah, okay, I'd like to see overtakes as well, but you do have to still admire what these guys are doing at the moment. They're not driving slow, and that's why I wanted to point out the difference between these guys and Sergi Adas. These guys are fighting for their lives, and they're pulling away from Sergi Adas at the moment. Let's see, Nell and Schultz, so is it up to still about 3.5 seconds, Dave?
Yeah, Van Der Neet has done two personal best sectors as well. So Van Der Neet's got it hooked up. Schoer is certainly not slowing him down.
We're about to have another battle as well. Luke Maguire catching up to Zaharov. He's a few seconds away, a couple of seconds away at the moment, but we'll keep an eye on that one.
Now this is a fight. I know we're looking at a long fight between Maguire and Schultz. So that one is well and truly over now. And I'm going to look at lap times from Schultz.
Okay, what you couldn't do, I just want to mention that Barbukov has retired the car. I'm not surprised with that massive suspension damage around here. You find, yeah, it'll go around some corners, like say for example left-hander's okay, but when you get to a right-hander it does not want to do it, so he's done the best thing he could, retired the car there, sensible thing to do. Zaharov is struggling a little bit. Okay, Dave, update us on the lap times?
Yeah, I think Schultz has probably peaked in terms of his car's tyre performance because he is now running half a second slower than Nell. I think Nell appears to have responded, and he's in the high 143s. Schultz did a 144.5 last time round, so the gap is now starting to go the other way, and it's out to 3.7.
I mentioned about... Sorry, go on, Dave.
No, I was just going to say, so Schultz probably at this point is a little bit like Vettel was at Malaysia when he hunted down Daniel Ricciardo and had his big lash and then realised he had nothing left and he decided to bring it home and take the points. And I think Schultz P6 is not something to be sneezed at in this event.
I agree.
So he's going to want to perhaps take that to the bank.
It's one of those where if he pushes if he's realised that while pushing hard to try and catch up, he may risk losing the car, then it's sensible to go, you know what, I'm not going to push too hard. Now, I mentioned that Luke Maguire is catching up to Zaharov a little bit. He is gaining on him. But also, Georg Chatsipantelis on his newer option tyres is kind of catching on the both of them. Let's see what similar lap time as Luke Maguire, so not catch up at the moment. But we may have a bit of a battle for 7th place in the final few laps.
Yeah, this if Schultz finishes here in P6, this will be his biggest ever points haul because his best result to date has been a 9th place or a 7-point result. So this will be an 11-point result for Peter. So that's something he should be very, very pleased to keep.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a couple of tracks on, say, an F1 calendar or even the FSR calendar where as much as you want to say, I want to win that one, you have to begin with, I want to get to the end on that one. Well, and this is one of those tracks.
Exactly. Yeah, you're battling the walls as much as you are the other drivers, and we've only got to look at this, the DNF list. We've got 9 people left running, a 50% attrition rate. So yeah, to finish in the points, firstly you have to finish at all.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those, get to the end and wherever you are is where you are. It's as simple as that. Okay, I think I've got a feeling. Okay, I shouldn't sing. Really shouldn't. I think Christoph Schoer's tyres may be giving up the ghost a little bit. He got very, very twitchy in Sector 3 on the previous lap. He's dropped back a little bit. Oh yeah, going deep again. I think he may be struggling on his tyres now. Tricky situation then for Christoph Schoer because he may have to just think, you know what, I've got a big gap to the car behind. Let's get to the end.
Well, you know who's not thinking like that, I think at the moment, is Luke Maguire, because he's going half a second quicker than Zaharov. And I don't think Luke Maguire is thinking, I'm just going to finish this race. I think he's thinking, I want to attack someone and pass them and stay in front of them this time.
Yeah, that is quite possibly true. Yeah, it definitely looks like Christoph Schoer is struggling a little bit in each of the slightly bigger braking zones now. So I think we may have seen the best of that action there.
Now Maguire-Zarov the gap is now down to 0.8 of a second. And he's got a different set of challenges, whereas with the Schulze battle, the Schulze had a car that was very strong in the corners, and Zaharov has a car that is very, very strong in traction, in terms of acceleration onto the straights. And in fact, that's where Maguire's car, in my opinion, seems to be weakest. So I think he's going to get a real sniff of gearbox oil from Zarov. But I think every corner exit, Zarov is just going to drop him. So unless he can put his nose up beside Zarov's car and take some track position, it's going to be a tough challenge, and a very different challenge to the Schulze battle.
It definitely is. I mean, the interesting thing about this race as well is, for someone like Luke Maguire, he's probably going to be more exhausted than, say, Sander Callas, because of the type of race that he's had. But also, Luke Maguire's attention should be perked a little bit more, because he's had to be attentive all the way through the race. A little bit like we were saying with Nell and Schulze. If Schulze catches up to Nell, I'd potentially favour Schulze in that one, because he's had to be attentive for much longer, whereas Nell, for a period of time, has been, I'm happy, I'm comfortable, stay in the rhythm, stay in the groove, oh no, I've got to defend. And that effect can be massive. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Christoph Schoer has dropped back from Danny van der Neet. I'm just wondering if Van der Neet's had a little bit of a tricky sector. About 1.1 seconds between them now. I think that's going to hold station, but I will keep an eye on that for you, Dave.
I think that Maguire and Zarov, and who was it with them at the beginning? Was it Kulak? I think the three of these guys have been in a fight pretty much from the opening lap, other than during pit stop intervals. So we've, Maguire and Zarov, this is going to get it's going to get personal now. It's been such a long fight that neither one of them wants to come second. So as we stare down the barrel at the last 5 or 6 laps of the race, neither of these guys wants the other one to have the upper hand. So Maguire is attacking hard. They're coming. They're into the very turny, repetitive turny section of sector 3, under the bay turn, under the hotel. Then a right, then a left, and then onto the final double kink to the left. And Maguire is getting fantastic turn in, but he's just not getting great exit now. I wonder if we'll see Zarov just put the hammer down and he just pulls a bit of a gap onto the straights every single time. Maguire might pull him in a bit on corner entry. In fact, he pulls him in big time through those combinations to turn 3. But Zarov again gets the traction on exit. So this is the closest Maguire's has been to him as they enter Raffles Boulevard. Not such a great exit out of turn 5 from Maguire, but he's been very aggressive here into turn 7, the left-hander, when he's had the chance, when he's been close enough. He and Schulze had several battles there. In fact, he would have just driven past his front wing, in fact, on that little sector from his previous incursions. Yeah, and Zarov is showing him the way still. It's still a gap.
I mean, you mentioned as well there about passing his front wing. I mean, without that little bit of damage, he would have come out of the pits on his final stop ahead of Zaharov.
Oh, 100% by a mile, because he drove half a lap with no front wing. And don't forget that he pulled to the left to allow someone through. So that, I think you're talking probably, with the repair, 20 seconds sort of delay.
Yeah.
I mean, he was with Schulze. He was side by side with Schulze. And, he's now a minute back, probably, from Schulze.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Yeah. Now that cost him dearly, that front wing loss.
I am keeping an eye on Schoer and Van der Neet, and the gap has closed up again a little bit. But I believe the viewers are seeing this as well. I mean, the gap's closed up a little bit, but not enough. I think the tyres have gone just too much for Christoph Schoer to really launch a final attack, unless Danny van der Neet's tyres go off. I can see as well on YouTube, I think it's Victor Ivanov saying that Danny van der Neet is really ill. If he wasn't before this race, he will be afterwards. Dave, news on Maguire and Zaharov?
Well, I'm showing Maguire through.
Yeah, Zaharov, no front wing.
Oh, goodness, I missed that. I was looking at points because Chatsapancelis, oh no, Zaharov has just smashed into the side of of the track on Raffles Boulevard, and I think Zaharov will have to retire the car. Yep, he's just sitting still. He's retired with suspension damage. What a shame. I will go back and have a little look and see what happened, and our broadcaster may wish to do that as well.
Be a massive shame for Zaharov. I mean, obviously, I'm not sure what happened between the two of them. I don't know if there was contact or anything like that, but
Zaharov into turn 1. I'm watching him through turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. Maguire is several metres away. Zaharov just had a massive power oversteer moment, got a bit greedy on the exit of turn 3. That cost him his front wing, and then turning right onto Raffles Boulevard, he put the power down, and with no front wing, understeered terribly into the concrete barriers. So it was an exit oversteer moment, exit of turn 3. After all the pressure, I guess, that had been exerted by Maguire. So shame for Dmitry Zaharov to end his race in that way.
It is. We are on to the last lap of the race. Sander Kalas still leading, 24-second lead. Christoph Schoen knows it's the last lap. He's very close to the back of Danny van der Neet. But I mean, I mentioned earlier on as well that even if your car setup is perfectly balanced, if your right foot is a little too eager, you'll still find the barrier, and unfortunately that is what happened to Zaharov. But yeah, I mean, Sander Kalas looking comfortable out there at the moment, but Christoph Schoen looking from on board, he looks like he's just driving that little bit more aggressively. He knows the amount of opportunities he's going to have. He's just getting shorter and shorter and shorter because there's not many corners left to go. But Sander Kalas is heading up to the penultimate corner, Dave.
Well, indeed, what a majestic drive from Sander, the newly crowned ACE champion from Formula Sim Racing. He rounds the final corner and showing a lot of joy with the body language of that car, and Sander Kalas takes the victory in truly a lights to checkered flag victory. He was never headed. He left the pits after his first pit stop in first place and has never been anywhere other than first place. A clean sweep. Never saw another car's gearbox other than when he was lapping people, which we won't go back into again. Danny van der Neet pulls off second place, and Christoph Schoen, after an incredible battle between the two of them that lasted so many laps, makes up the bottom step of the podium. So a fantastic race between van der Neet and Schoen, separated by 9/10 of a second after 61 laps. So what an amazing drive. Sergei Heras now making the final double kick left-hand corner to take fourth place. A really strong drive from Sergei, running his own strategy and being pretty much on his own through the event. But a great drive. And now we look back to Dewald Nell, who's holding down fifth place as he negotiates the final Sector 3, where we've got so many turns, 16, 17, 18, 19. Turn 18, the bay turn under the hotel, and Nell takes the right-hander of turn 19, and you can almost see the final corners now. It's been a long and mainly lonely race for Peter, other than when Peter Schultz has started to threaten him, and Dewald Nell would be very pleased with that. Fifth place, crosses the line, feeling pretty good about things, and Peter Schultz are now only a couple of seconds behind him, probably 4 odd seconds behind him.
Yep, it was about that. I mean, I've got to say, it's a great drive from everybody out there. I mean, as we said during the broadcast, the main thing to do is to get to the end, then you can worry about what position you're in. And I think Peter Schultz having a little bit of a drive next to Dewald Nell, sort of to say, well done, good race. I wish I could have had you. But yeah, great drive from all those that managed to get to the end. I mean, Sander Kalas are in a class of his own, but I've got to say hats off to Danny van der Neet and Christoph Schoen, as you said, Dave, to be 9/10 of a second apart after 61 laps. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, indeed. I think the first thing you've got to do here is beat the track, and then you can start thinking about beating the other guys. And so many times we saw it was the concrete barriers that were people's undoing, other than other drivers. So hats off to anybody who did 61 laps of this Grand Prix. Hats off to anybody who finished even a lap down. Also hats off to the drivers who weren't quite on the lead pace, but showed tremendous judgment and manners and situational awareness in blue flag moments. So some of our new drivers were exemplary in that way. Other drivers could perhaps just learn a thing or two, but no doubt their team managers will talk to them. But all in all, an incredible event for these guys. Tough old race. Thank you very much to Georg Winter for running the cameras. We hope all of our viewers enjoyed the event. And please come and join us tomorrow. The big one, the World Championship, is on at the same time, but tomorrow, and the pro event earlier in the afternoon. So we'd love you to come and see us again. And as we said earlier, feel free to get involved. The links are all under the screen here on YouTube. Come and get involved.
Yeah, definitely. I'll just give one final thank you. Thank George Winter there. He's done a great job on the cameras today. Thank you to the viewers, but also Dave, thank you to yourself for giving up your Saturday evening to give these guys a good commentary on their race. It's been a pleasure as always doing the commentary with you. It's been an interesting race, and I've got to say, I still don't know what to do with strategy when it comes to tomorrow.
Well, thanks for coming and joining me, Dave, because I don't know what I would have done. I think my voice would have gone by now if I was on my own. So thank you very much for helping and adding everything that you added to the stream. I guess what we could do is the thoughts of drive of the day. Any thoughts of drive of the day?
You know what? You could very easily give it to Sander Kallas. You really could, because he has been phenomenal. But I expect that from him now. So Sander Kallas winning a race, as fantastic as it is not special anymore. Don't take offence, Sander Kallas. I think I'd give it to Danny van der Neet, having to deal with that much pressure for so long, and there was only one hint of a mistake. I think I'd have to give it to Danny van der Neet.
Yeah, I think I'm going to cheat and mention three people. I'm going to mention Sander because that was a fantastic drive. Really, pole and led the whole way, and it just shows he's done finishing school now. He's ready for World Championship.
Yeah,
and Danny, agree with you. To resist the pressure that Christoph Schoer put on Danny for those last, whatever it was, 15, 20 laps where they were just separated by less than a second was pretty incredible. And the other drive that I really quite enjoyed, although it wasn't an exciting drive, was Sergei Eras. I thought that was a really good job to put himself from 6th up to 4th.
Was he
in qualifying, and that was good points.
No, you're right. Sergei was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I mean, you could even say for Christoph Schoer. I mean, for all the pressure that Danny van der Neet withstood, Christoph Schoer did ever so well to not end up in a barrier that close behind another car. I mean, each one of those guys definitely deserves the drink they're going to go and get this evening.
Yeah, 100%. Well, so I guess we'll sign off. Thank you very, very much, viewers, for joining us, for having us in your living rooms this evening, and we hope that people who watch this later on, because we know a lot of people, pick these streams up later on and enjoy them. So thanks for spending the time and participating in our sport, and we hope to see you soon at the next race.